Who are we waiting on? Oh, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We're very fortunate to have Superintendent Woods with us this afternoon. Going to teach a little lesson to us. So, Superintendent, your students are all seated and ready for their treat. Yes, sir. Good to have you. Good to have you. Yes, sir.
Well, if I'm supposed to give you a treat, session's over, so, go home. But it's a pleasure to be with you today, and thank you for this opportunity to bring an update on education, and I appreciate that time, so we'll jump right into it, I think, if I can get this. There we go. There we go. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for your support of education. It has been well received throughout the field, to be quite honest. And I think last year's 2019 General Assembly session was definitely historic, to say the least. Teachers took notice of the support that you offered and provided. Last fall, Governor Kemp and I hosted listening sessions with educators throughout the state. At every stop, the teachers and leaders told us how much they appreciated the full funding of QBE, but especially the $3,000 raise that they incurred. So again, I wanted to express my thank you to each of you in this room for securing that, and for an increase in certified staff, and for increased funding in both mental health and in school safety. Georgia public schools are continuing to trend to see strong gains on the national state indicators. You can see some of the things that we've been able to make some good progress on with the slide. We were recently ranked 13th in the nation for K-12 achievement by Education Week. We're outscoring the national average on the ACT, and Georgia public school students are outscoring the national average on the SAT. Performance on our Georgia Milestones assessment, continues to go up. And we've had an all-time high rate as far as our graduation rate at 82%. The encouraging thing, that's the 4-year cohort. When you look at the 5-year cohort, we're looking at roughly an 85% graduation rate. So we're seeing those good trends. I do firmly believe that within the near future we will be at a 90% grad rate. And I say that with not just receiving a diploma, but it has something that has meaning and meat to it, and really allows our kids to go and have a clear pathway in life. And speaking of pathways, our CTA pathway completers, they actually have a graduation rate of 96%. So you can see the relevance piece is really a strong piece as we move on and support our kids in a variety of ways. But of course, I do want to be honest with you, we do still face challenges within the state of Georgia. Many Georgia students live in poverty. Poverty is probably the leading barrier to success that we continue to see throughout the state. 1 in 4 lives with food insecurity. We do have to do everything we can to meet those needs, because students cannot learn when they're hungry or sick or tired, because they don't feel safe or have a safe place to sleep. So we know that there are many factors that before a child can actually learn, we have to look at some things across the board that support that environment. Our rural schools are dealing with a shrinking tax base and a high-need student populations. Areas like transportation, in particular, present funding challenges for our rural districts, and being able to offer them a variety of options, but because of funding, it does hurt these rural areas. But many schools still struggle to recruit and retain teachers, especially high-need content areas such as special ed. And again, that's something not unusual throughout the state, but in our rural areas, we see this as a great problem. High-stakes testing is another area of concern. We continue to hear concerns from teachers, parents, and students about the time dedicated to high-stakes tests and about the impact of those tests on students and on instruction. Another challenge is student mental health. This is an area of schools need our support to address, and I appreciate that. But you can see just I think look at the slide. We talk about mental health. 11.3% of our students said they seriously had or seriously contemplated suicide within the 12 months. That's a high percentage. And we look at other things that our students have to deal with, whether it's family issues, and across the board. And this has a direct bearing on our students' ability to learn. We're working to address those issues. So again, even though I mentioned them to you, we are seeking to have solutions and make that available at the agency level. Through initiatives like the expansion of wraparound services and supports, the direction of federal funds to support identified needs in rural schools, and a new Office of School Safety and Climate, we are making strides to address issues. We also look forward to working with you during the 2020 session to address these challenges and to remove barriers so that we can continue the positive trajectory of Georgia Public Schools. Our focus is on responsibility and aligned accountability, ensuring state testing and accountability requirements are aligned, and how to best serve our students and needs. But also, as we look at this, we are looking also to strengthen our teacher pipeline. Students is one part of the equation, but you've got to have an excellent teacher in there. As I've shared with people in a group this morning, I said, you'd think about in the years, our students, if you asked them, who was your favorite teacher or who was your favorite state school superintendent, they're going to be able to tell who your teacher was. And that's not saying or diminishing the role of this office, but it's just the fact of reality. I remember my teachers. To be honest, I can't tell you who my local superintendent was. And in some cases, I may not even be able to tell you remember who my principal was. But I do remember my teachers. And that's where we have to make sure that we are supporting what goes on there. As we look at our legislative priorities and continue that, expanding opportunities for students, especially the area of fine arts, and also the funding of public education and renewing rural Georgia. What our kids, and as I met with with my student advisory groups, one of the things that they were very adamant about is providing an education that's relevant, giving them real life examples, supporting them in the classroom as they think about where are they going to be after the K-12 experience. And that's what, is on their hearts. Giving them coursework, and again, I think one of the things I've kind of initiated, such as personal finance. I think that's a course that every student can benefit from in the state of Georgia. And doing things that expand opportunities, such as the fine arts. I mean, there's more to life than math and English, but every course that we offer in K-12 education needs to have a benefit and should have a benefit. And there's more to life, as I shared, that we can offer our young people in many cases. Again, I want to thank you for your support of Georgia Public Education, our schools, our students. If I can do anything to serve, please do not feel or do not hesitate to reach out. We're at a good place in Georgia education. I'm excited about where we're at. And really, I could have had slide after slide after slide of the good and great things that are going on, and that's thanks to our teachers, our workforce, and just the alignment of things that are going on. The governor and I have a great relationship. Our relationship with GOSA has never been better. And and I anticipate that we'll continue to grow. And I know that for you, in my experience with meeting each of you in here, your heart is where it should be, and that's supporting our kids and doing what's right for Georgia, because their success will be our success as a state. So at this time, I'm going to turn the report over to Ted Beck, our financial officer. So Ted.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee, for the opportunity to present the governor's budget recommendations for the department. Foremost, we just want to express our appreciation from the governor and the legislature for the continued consideration of QBE and K-12 funding. Fully funding the formula obviously is a tremendous benefit to the districts, and we're excited to see that the budget instructions and the governor's recommendations have exempted the QBE formula from any reductions so far this year. We know the districts are in agreement with that appreciation. We're also very excited about the recommendation to continue investments in the formula beyond growth through an additional $2,000 increase for teacher salaries. Just wanted to spend a few minutes going over some slides to give you a quick overview of what's usually the biggest driver of state spending each year, and that is growth inside of the QBE formula. So this slide shows just over 25 years of enrollment numbers for the state. And you can see, for the most part, we've shown fairly significant year-to-year growth right up until around 2016. So as it stands, we have a little over 1.7 million students enrolled in the K-12 system. And for 2020, the student census that feeds into the formula showed a 0.3% increase to enrollment. And that's in line with what we've been seeing over about the last 5 years. So demographically, that makes sense, and you can see why in this next slide. The bottom line is that our birth rate in this state has flattened to where we don't see year-to-year increases in the number of babies being born in Georgia. Historically, I've been able to project about 95% of the incoming kindergarten class from the number of births that we had 6 years prior. So I've highlighted on this slide the data point for 2014. That's essentially your 2020 kindergarten class. And you can see we've just, beginning essentially with the recession, started to see a decline. I had expected when I came into this role, we were kind of at the bottom of that trough there to see an uptick to recover back to where we had been in the past, but that is not the case. And Georgia is not unique in that. This is what it looks like in most states our size across the country. For whatever reason, just demographically, families are having fewer children, and that's starting to manifest inside of our K-12 cohort. And so given this trend, I would expect K-12 enrollment to stay somewhere in terms of year-to-year growth between 0.5% for the foreseeable future. So the natural question is then, why is it still going to cost us $115 million this year and $145 million the next year to fund QBE if we don't have as many kids coming into the system? And that's what I've tried to show on this slide. It's a little crowded, but one of the biggest drivers inside of QBE, other than just pure growth, are the actual categories of educational service that a student gets placed into. And that's what I'm showing here, is all 18 categories inside of QBE and the number of students placed in them for about 10 years. And so the takeaway is that there are 5 categories that a student could be assigned to that are just based on the grade level of the student. And those are those 5 big ones at the bottom of the chart. The other 13 QBE categories are for various different things. They include for students with disabilities, English as a second language, the gifted program, CTAE, remedial and early intervention programming. All of those are what we call higher cost QBE categories. And so it's still a little bit difficult to see, but the takeaway is that 10 years ago, the split between a QBE category that was just based on your grade level and those higher cost QBE categories was about 70% grade level, 30% higher cost categories. 10 years later, in 2020, it's more like 65-35. Now, numerically, 5 percentage points doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a big driver of the cost. And so despite there not being a lot of new bodies coming into the K-12 system, QBE is still continuing to drive costs because of that shift into higher cost category placements. So with that, I will cover in brief our budget, and I think, again, it's a little bit confusing if you're new to it, but there are essentially 2 separate pots of funding. There's all the money in our budget associated with QBE and the state grant programs that flow through us to districts, and then there's the department's operating budget, which makes it more like just any other state agency's budget. Our original submission to the governor's office included 4% and 6% reductions as instructed to both our operating budget and to any of those state grant programs that weren't specifically exempted. There are a handful that are tucked in here and there that you can see programmatically in the governor's report that are district funds, and so we showed what a 4% and 6% reduction to those looked like, in addition to making sure that we did our due diligence and found operational ways to scale down our spending. Fortunately, the governor's recommendations at this point have ended up leaving most of those non-exempt state-funded grant programs intact, which again, we were very appreciative of. I know the districts feel the same way. That said, in order to balance the budget, if you're going to reduce a reduction on one side, you've got to find a way to take it in some other places. And so the net result of that is that our actual operational reductions are a little bit higher than 4% and 6%, closer to about 4.5% this year and 6.5% in the next fiscal year. Our strategies to meet these reductions went back into place in the fall once we learned what the instructions were going to require. And you'll see in the governor's report a lot of language around vacant positions, travel costs, computer purchases, subscriptions, conferences. Rather than go line by line through all of those, I'll try to just summarize generally what we're doing. We implemented a hiring freeze right after getting notification that we were looking at budget reduction scenarios. So we are not posting positions or hiring anybody without a very careful consideration of what the needs of the department are, whether or not it's a critical position, whether we can make do without. And so we were trying to recognize natural attrition in a lot of different programs across the department. The net total effect of that is to try to save about $1 million this year and about $1.5 million in personnel cost in the following fiscal year. Travel is something else we've worked on. We spend a lot of time historically on the ground with districts, working with them in various different service areas. But the goal there is to make sure that we're using all possible legitimate alternatives, virtual meetings, teleconferencing, video hosting, anything that'll make sure that we're still being able to deliver those services, but not necessarily including the cost of putting somebody in a car and driving and staying overnight in a hotel. And so the goal there is to save around $350,000 in this current fiscal year and closer to $500,000 in FY21. And the last big pot is kind of that catch-all, it's everything else. And again, it's a lot of different things, but we're hoping to save $2 million this year and $2.5 million in the following fiscal year through what I'm calling operational reductions. Examples of what's included in that is moving away from our technology refresh cycle. We had an established refresh rate for all our computers and other pieces of technology, generally following a 3-year replacement. We're now essentially moving into a break-fix mode where as long as it still turns on and allows the user to do the functional things they need, we don't need a new computer. We've greatly reduced the number of contractors that we had inside of our IT department. That does have an impact on our ability to manage our applications portfolio, but again, we're moving from where we were more agile, able to respond to development requests, upgrade systems on a more regular basis into, again, kind of a break-fix mode where we're going to keep the applications that we have online. Districts are going to be able to be served by them, but they just won't be necessarily as responsive given the fact that we'll just have fewer resources dedicated to those. Limiting cost around training and professional development. This is a big core feature of what we do inside the department. We've got folks that are out there working with teachers, with administrators, with school districts on how to teach, how to do things differently, how to improve academic outcomes. Again, trying to make sure that we're focusing on the ones that make the most sense, that give us the most bang for the buck, as it were, have the most effect on actual student experiences, and places where we haven't necessarily seen that kind of outcome, scaling back on that. Again, given its significance, just want to do a quick review of the major QBE changes. And so in your budget report, you'll see this start on page 174. So this is the amended 20 QBE, so what we call normally the midterm adjustment. This is where we catch districts up that grew more than was originally anticipated when the budget was first enacted in its original form, July 1. So again, $114 million is what the formula has produced in terms of the midterm adjustment for FY20. You'll see an $18 million line item related to the state charter school supplement. There were 4 new state charters that were authorized and came online, and there's just been a tremendous amount of growth in the number of students at the other existing state charters, and so that's driving the cost up in that particular program. There's payments made on a student-by-student basis for students that are enrolled in those schools. I think just below that, you'll see $9 million, also related to the state charter supplement. This is a formula adjustment that goes back to a piece of legislation enacted last year, House Bill 787, that tweaked what that supplement is actually composed of and has driven up cost a little bit there, and so this is a catch-up to make those institutions whole. We're very excited to see a recommendation for almost $10 million to the Special Needs Scholarship Program, SB 10. Enrollment in this program has just continued to increase, particularly over the last several years. There was a legislative change that moved the opportunities to enroll in the program from, I think, a semi-annual to a quarterly basis. And I don't know if that's the biggest driver or what, but when I started 4.5 years ago, the population was around 3,500. It's now up to about 5,000. And quarter by quarter, we continue to see incremental growth in that program, and so this is funding that will allow us to meet the needs and to pay out those scholarships to those students and their families. QBE for FY21, the upcoming fiscal year, starts on page 180. Biggest change that you'll see there, again, I mentioned, and we again are very excited about, is a $360 million investment into the formula that would provide a $2,000 salary increase for teachers and administrators inside of the QBE formula. Something I don't think that has gotten quite as much attention, but kind of falls into the same line, and they're in different places. It's not in the QBE program specifically, but the governor has recommended a 5% increase to the salary supplements that the state pays for both nutrition and transportation staff inside of districts. Total cost of that proposal is right at $5.5 million. You'll see the equalization program has grown slightly to $32 million more than it was in the past. That reflects generally an increase in local tax digest. That's not a universal experience by any means, but districts that continue to see a rebound in real estate prices and related taxable levied taxes are seeing an increase. And so as that margin grows, the cost of the equalization program continues to grow. The counterpart to that is the local 5 mil share program. Again, because of increasing tax digest across the state, the offset related to that has grown by about $150 million for the FY21 cycle. There has been a change to the TRS employer share rate. I can't speak to the actuarial basis behind that, but understand that that will have a net effect of reducing the costs for QBE in terms of its payments into the plan on behalf of teachers by $166 million. Again, a real big jump on the state charter side. It's a $50 million increase for the FY21 cycle. That appears to be largely formula driven. Again, it's the 4 new schools, and it's an increase of about 2,500 students into the collective body of state authorized charter schools. And you'll see a repeat of the recommended investment into the SB 10 program of about $10 million to again account for enrollment growth and to give us a base budget that will allow us to pay out the scholarships that we need to pay out on a quarterly basis to those students. Other big changes that bear mentioning, all the way in the back of the book, if you want to look, page 375, this is in your bonds section. The governor's recommendations include fully funding the capital outlay program, and so this is construction for schools across the state. And we just again want to point out what a significant investment that is and express our appreciation to the governor and the legislature for continuing to fund that program in the manner that they have. It is and has been historically the largest piece of the capital budget each year. I'm sorry to hop around. I think the only other big changes that you might have noticed are back on page 178. There is a recommendation to eliminate the grants for CTAE program. This is a newer program. It is essentially a pot of cash that was introduced into the budget to pay for CTAE lab equipment inside of district classrooms, with the goal being to try to get to districts that had not gotten one of the bonds. Over the past, I can tell you how many years, but historically or traditionally, we've seen somewhere between $10 and $15 million in bonded debt each year for this same purpose. We have a competitive grant application where districts are able to apply and to access those funds. The cash pot was designed to make it a little bit more flexible so that we can meet more immediate needs that come online that don't necessarily follow that schedule that the bond funding required. So this would eliminate those funds in their entirety. And then finally on pages 172 for the amended and then 177 for the FY21 cycle, the governor has recommended some fairly significant changes to the CTO program funding. In FY20, the current fiscal year, these recommendations would reduce the budget by about 27%, which would essentially eliminate any non-personnel spending for the rest of the year for that program. You'll see those same reductions repeated in a pretty similar form in FY21, in addition to a transfer of $1.2 million, which represents the personnel costs for all the folks inside of that program, save for the CTO position itself. So I'll stop there, and the superintendent and I will be available for any questions you might have.
Okay, Senator Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank y'all for what y'all do to educate our next generation of leaders in Georgia. I do have one question on page 179 about the non-community formula grant program, and I'm going to let y'all decide your answer to it. I noticed that we've reduced it a little over $1 million, and I have 2 residential treatment facilities and the others around the state as well. Do I need to say all that again now that my microphone's on? We good?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Sorry about that operator error.
so it is you're correct, a $1.1 million reduction based largely on attendance. The RTFs, the residential treatment facilities, these are institutions that house students, or really just children who have some sort of a severe emotional need, but there is an educational component to those since they are residential settings, and so the state does pick that up through this particular program. We receive the information from the RTFs around two primary drivers. It's total bed capacity and then average daily attendance, and those are what drives the output of that, and the makeup of what those numbers looked like is what's generated this reduction. We've gone back and looked at that a couple of times and tried to verify with OPB and other budget writing offices to make sure that they have the same information, but it really is just an artifact of what the formula produced this year based on declining FTE, bed space, and average daily attendance reports back to the department this year.
Okay, thank you. I would like to talk with y'all offline about this sometime. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Stovall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Superintendent Woods, you and your staff. The concern I have in the budget is the reduction with the RESAs, and I guess this might be the fiscal year 20, and also with the school improvement, and then following over with the fiscal year 2021, where those funds for the CTO was moved over to school improvement. So my concern is that where RESA, and my understanding of RESA and what school improvement and the CTO were doing with those lower performing schools, and I know that they are kind of like an intensive care mode, and so my concern is how much support will they now be able to get, being that you had two different categories of low performing schools. You had the ones that were below the 60, which is the chief turnaround officer focused on, and then the school improvement had the ones that were close to being in the turnaround phase to keep them from getting below the 60. So I'm very concerned about how much focus will really be able to be done to those schools, because I know when they came to education committee meetings, they really expressed how they were glad that they were getting that special care to help them to figure out what was going on with their individual schools.
Well, I think that, to address, and I'll be back a little bit later to speak in the area of the CTO, but what I saw with the budget there is that typically the operational budget has been slid into our school improvement area. Dr. Johnson does a great job as we look, and we're preparing of actually closing in that Tier 4, which the CTO office was in charge of. So I don't think we're going. Well, in fact, I'm very confident we will not miss anything in that area. Information that I'll share a little bit later on today, you'll see that what we have done in school improvement has been very effective, more so in comparison. So, from that part, I don't see that we'll do anything. We're looking at our budget, completely to see where, is there any deficiencies? But I appreciate Governor Kemp and his, fiscal conservatism. I think, smaller government is always something to look at. And we're making sure that, that if we are initially asking things, maybe be able to slide funds around or move them around to really prioritize. And as we do that, we'll, kind of measure what we're at to the RESAs. Again, I think everyone, we're looking at the budget. We've all been asked, so I don't think our agency is an exception to any rule. And, right now, like I said, our job is to look at the budget, but as far as the CTO, I don't see that we will miss anything at all with that. In fact, I think we'll probably be stronger with the case because we'll have more streamlined services as we move forward. With the others, we're in good shape right now.
Chairman England.
Superintendent, how are you today?
Doing good.
Good.
Yeah.
Just want to draw your attention to a couple questions as it relates to state schools. I realize that these three facilities around the state, from Cave Spring, Atlanta, and Macon, that kind of between y'all on the state school board and DOE and us as the General Assembly kind of act as their school board per se, since there's not a local entity that does. But do have some concerns with the proposed cuts under the amended there of about 1.4, almost 1.5 million, reducing funds for personal services and operating expenses. And then over in the 21 budget, taking a pretty good lick there, vacant positions 830,000, about 1.2 million in operating expenses there. And how are we seeing a huge drop off in the number of students using those and systems that are using those three schools? How do these cuts, or how are these cuts going to affect the operations at those schools? Does that mean we're going to pull services back from individuals? How are we going to achieve those savings, I guess?
It's a little bit of everything. We did work really closely with Dr. Kenny Moore and his school directors, and to their credit, when we outlined for them what the budget reduction scenarios looked like, they huddled together and came up with a fairly detailed plan of how they thought they could operationalize both a 4% and a 2% reduction across the three schools. And so it's, again, recognizing attrition. It's letting some positions go open longer than we would, or keeping positions open indefinitely in some cases. The feedback I've gotten from them is that they're comfortable with what they've submitted as their operating plan and these reductions, and then it gives them enough flexibility to adapt over the course of the academic year to any needs that arise. And it's not going to be easy, and hasn't been easy thus far, but that they don't feel like that there's going to be a tremendous change in the academic services or the residential services they provide, and in the case of the schools that house students overnight. But we can certainly provide that information that they've put together and show you kind of where we are in terms of tracking to that plan thus far.
Well, I've just got concerns. We have, this body, the General Assembly, has invested bond funds and cash funds for the last several years in trying to make improvements in those facilities. And in doing so, the idea has been the entire time is to open up for more services for more students that they're not able to get there locally. And I have a pretty grave concern about the depths of these cuts and what the possibility is, or what it means as we move forward, whether or not we're going to be able to accept more students coming into there. And part of what they need to be doing, what they have been doing, is doing some outreach in communities, because what they provide is something that's very specialized. And when I look at, we look at some of the programs, direct construction being exempt. Well, this is not only direct construction, but it's residential housing and the whole 9 yards, but yet we're cutting them to the point. I just fear that it may be harmful and backwards and regressive from where we've really tried to go over the last several years. And this is certainly a student population that it takes a lot to help those individuals. And this is kind of one of my soft spots.
Understand.
Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman and Superintendent Woods and Mr. Beck, my question concerns the Whole Child Model Program, and specifically how would that program be deployed, and what resources, additional resources, if any, would be required to support the program and sustain it?
Was that the Whole Child? Okay. With the Whole Child Program, again, I think that team is led by Ashley Harris. We continue to, look at, it's kind of a partnership where we extend and trying to bring in other agencies, other groups that can support, especially support at the local level. I think we've been very effective in that. It's not something that's just agency driven, but definitely since it is so much at the local level, we're doing some things, whether it's following a Marietta school model of meeting services. We're trying to be flexible and recognize that not every whole child initiative looks the same or costs the same throughout the state. But we're again at this time looking through the budget. I think if we can see some areas where we can have some flexible shifting with some things that would help us out to meet needs. Again, I'm speaking from an individual that's coming from business and private as well. That where I think having that option would help us as an agency. We are currently going through the budget as we speak, and as to make sure that we can meet the operational needs that we have. And definitely that is one area that we're looking at. But right now I feel strong where we're at with the Whole Child Initiative. but also looking at our partners outside, such as community schools and other groups that we utilize to help support our children in different ways. Working with behavioral health, and thinking about some things of how do we support those kids in those mental health aspects. Having a discussion, I know at Dr. McGibney with our school climate and safety group, and seeing is there, again, looking at perhaps our technical school to be of some support, or, telemedicine, how do we deliver some of those things. So, we're trying to look, holistically and think about what does this look like further down the road, but also what our needs are, because, I do understand they are different from community to community. And, so far right now, I feel that we're in a good spot, but as I've shared, I think the biggest thing is being able to maybe move and adjust funds based on need, and that would be one of the biggest benefits to the agency right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Superintendent Woods and Ted, for what you do. Chairman England and Representative Stovall both addressed two questions and concerns of mine too, so I look forward to having further in-depth discussions on those two issues later. So all I'll finish up with is, Superintendent Woods, you listed your priorities on your PowerPoint: testing, accountability, retired teachers, and those type things. But one thing I noticed you did not have on there is teacher raises. Was that an oversight, or is that not a? I would think that would be one of your priorities.
Yes, sir. Well, again, looking at the priorities, it was the priority list was kind of done prior to, but teacher raises, and support always is at the forefront. I support Governor Kemp and his initiative. Again, I know this is, we already have the 3,000, which I mentioned. The teachers throughout the state and those that receive that are, we're extremely delighted. And, I firmly have always believed that the other 2,000 would come. And so, it is something we look at. I think, what would it show to our teachers? And again, I speak that. It shows a commitment, that we value what they do. I think it is an investment. And I think that when you look at for us, looking at retention and also recruitment, that sends a strong message as well. So I don't know that I would say it was an oversight, but it is definitely something that has been, issued by the governor. We support his initiative in that, and I think, I would encourage everyone to look at the value. I think that we must see education as an investment in the state of Georgia. And to be honest, as I shared, you remember your teachers. You do not remember the other people that's out there per se. So that's my support there.
Thank you. May I ask one? We've heard a lot this morning about other agencies' retention and recruitment of employees. Have you seen an uptick since this $3,000 raise we gave last year in teacher retention, or do you suspect that's is having an effect? Because I know retention is a big factor that I hear a lot out there.
Well, excuse me. I would probably, with the raise, it's 1 year in, so I don't know that you have enough, quantifiable data to say, yes, it is. But again, I just go by from what I hear out in the field. The teachers that I've met with say, I'm encouraged. I'm looking at staying in the profession. They've been more receptive to, to bragging about teaching and education, which again is probably our greatest recruitment tool, is to have our teachers bragging on that. So, based on information that I can't necessarily quantify, but what I hear, it's very encouraging. And I think that as we look at the next 2 or 3 years, we'll be able to look at that. Again, I look at this, if the 2,000 follows, that's a pretty good incentive to be in there. We are looking at legislation that will strengthen the teacher pipeline, a very comprehensive approach. So, this is, I think, just one piece of the pie that would give that incentive there. I wish I had some data I could, but because it is just 1 year, I couldn't give anything that would be scientifically valid.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Senator Watson.
A Commissioner, appreciate your what you are doing. I just wanted to follow up on the QBE formula and the population trends. Is there a prediction of time? I know it's a complicated formula there. You sort of proved that with the slide. But will we see a reduction in student population, and will we see a reduction in QBE formula because of that?
It's less than it has been. I mean, when we had 1 and 2, even 3% year-to-year growth, we were looking at $300 and $400 million growth numbers. So you're seeing some of that effect in that it's only 100 something, $150 million, unless you see a substantive flattening of that shift into those higher cost categories. It's going to continue to rise, and there's some natural growth built into that based on just some of those pieces of the formula, as you mentioned. Anytime you invest salary, that's going to tweak things a little bit in terms of those fringe calculations that are going to require an investment that you see reflected in the governor's recommendations. But if higher cost category growth continues and pure grade level category growth continues to drop, that's always going to cost more than the year before. But I would not expect it to jump radically out of the range that we've seen probably over the last 3 fiscal years.
Representative Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Superintendent, for being here. Just got a question on Reese's, and I will also have another one too, if I may. I attended the listening sessions also, and when you chose, I guess, to reduce funds and reduce operating expenses to Reese's, I guess I learned during those listening sessions and just being a part of it that those are vital to rural Georgia schools. And, they make the difference many times in their ability to improve. And my curiosity is, what were they not going to be able to do, this reduction in funds, what aren't they going to be able to do to help local rural schools?
But again, I think we'd have to hear from the Reese's themselves as far as what operationally they can and cannot do. We are looking and have been working at a more aligned strategy in which we support each other. So I think having a discussion of, is it something that the department can pick up? Is it something that we can help shift to the Reese's that to enlist their support in some areas? I think that as we look at that, it does, supports vary because districts look a little bit different, just as the whole child. And perhaps, again, it may be something that if we're able to shift or allow them to shift, resources to prioritize, we may see something there. But right now it's an ongoing discussion, and we've got to have our talks with them. But I do feel confident, since we are talking and have been talking over the past few years, that we can sit down and make sure that we do not miss anything. I think that's one of the things we want to make sure that we do not reduce needed services across the state. We are seeing some good trends and exceptional growth right now. And, and our Reese's have been valid partners, and, we'll look at, hearing from them as far as what their needs are and the potential impact that they see.
And just to follow up there on, as Chairman Dickey and Representative Stovall, looking at the move of the CTSO to school improvement, I know we've had a change there, but when I look in your budget, we're eliminating 7 positions that would go into school improvement. And I think this body generally over the last few years has said, the improvement of the lowest attaining schools, as Representative Stovall said, is just paramount. And you're going to be able to meet those needs of those schools with that reduction of positions, to be able to do that.
Yes, sir. Again, talking with Dr. Johnson, we've looked at, the potential changes based on the budget, what we see. I feel very confident we can. We are talking right now about, I think, 13 schools. So again, when you look, it's not a number of, if we were to say 50 or 60 or 70 schools, that would definitely be a different issue. But the way in which we are looking at, prioritizing and completing the Tier 4 aspect, I feel very confident we can do the job. I think that once you see some of the information this afternoon when I come back, you'll see that for us at the DOE, and especially area of school improvement, we do a good job. We've keep getting better. Dr. Johnson and her team are really phenomenal. And when you make that comparison, between the two, I think you'll be impressed with what we're doing, and not do not see that being any different. But again, speaking with Dr. Johnson, she is excited for the opportunity and feels very confident that she can get the job. And I'll guarantee you, if there's anyone in the state and the nation that can get a job done when it comes to school improvement, it's Dr. Johnson.
Well, just, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure she has the tools to do it.
Yes.
I think that's what that my concern is.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Time is drawing near. We got a couple more. Representative Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. Teachers are so vitally important to us, and we all remember those that were our favorite teachers in school, and Ms. Hobby, who was our 8th grade English teacher. Don't blame her to the peanut gallery for my diction. And she passed away this past session, and so when we think of teachers, we think of those that strike a comfortable chord that made a difference in our lives. And the $357 million that we have in the budget here from the governor's recommendation is widely regarded as a teacher pay raise. But do you know how much of this goes to classroom teachers like Ms. Hobby, and how much goes to administrators that are certified but not classroom teachers? Do you have any idea about that?
It's a little bit difficult to distinguish. The funding recommendation last year, and I assume this year, is based on the number of instructional positions that a district earns through the QBE formula. And so that gets a little bit complicated, but in essence, what we're doing is we're counting the number of students, the type of students, and there's a ratio, and every time you hit that ratio cap, an example is every time you put 23 high school student FTEs on a piece of paper, you earn an instructional position. And so the funding that you get out of QBE is that base salary and all the fringes and some additional components for non-instructional and instructional cost. So what's being funded is for every instructional position earned through QBE, you're seeing a salary enhancement to that base salary for those teachers. Then it's up to districts. We've afforded them through legislation over the years the flexibility to administer their salary schedule in a way that differs from what the state board salary schedule is. They can and have in some cases pay more than that. Now they have greater flexibility really to just manage that in their own case. When we did the increase last year, we did a survey, as we've done every year with any large investment into QBE, to have districts report back to us to share with the governor's office and the legislature what each district did. And as far as I can recall, just about every traditional district, if not every traditional district, enacted that salary increase and picked up the QBE funded positions and their local positions as well. So the vast majority is certainly dedicated or comes as a result of teaching positions as opposed to administrators.
Afraid it's going to have to be the last question, Representative Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Superintendent Ted, thank you all for being here. Thank you for what you do. My question real quick is in reference to the $1,000 raises, specifically in ag education. I noticed there that it's 809. That's not enough funds to provide $1,000 raise. And then in several other areas of your budget, it's the same exact number multiple times. And just curious if do you have the funds to give $1,000 raise where needed, or why is that number less than 1,000?
Sure. For the ag ed example in particular, all of those positions are what we call split funded. So there's a state funds component to it, and then there's a piece that's funded off of a federal funds program. And so they hand 809 is the state funds portion to provide that increase to a staff member in that program that would be eligible for that increase. And we would assumably be able to match that with the federal piece to get it to be 1,000 even.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Superintendent, there's still a few questions we had that we didn't get in, but we've run out of time. I urge you all, if you've got questions you didn't get answered, to catch him before he leaves, and I'm sure he'd be glad to talk with you. Thank you so much for your service. Appreciate it. Our next speaker is going to be handing out cigars while they come to the front. He's the newest grandfather in the house. Or maybe it's fake $100 bills like Odell Beckham did.
Should be on here. It is. I have loaded on the desktop if you want me to just do it real fast.
Or maybe real.
Do you want me to close the presentation real fast? Where's my mouse? There it is. Thank you. We put it right here. And I'm going to come back and delete it when we're done.
Do you guys need an extra this seat too?
Please enter quietly or
Tracy,
leave
maybe
quietly. The key word being quietly, please.
I'll leave this right here, Tracy.
Can I slide that?
I'm sorry, sir? Can you slide that? Oh, absolutely. Just yes, sir. So you get your iPad. Yes, sir. Thanks. Thank you.
I think that's what the speaker calls audible conversation. I can't say it as forcefully as he does. Okay. Chancellor Wrigley, we're glad to see you today and glad your daughter and baby are doing fine. And thank you so much for your service. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to discuss our budget request with you today. We really are grateful to the General Assembly for your support. We also thank Governor Kemp and his team for their support of the university system. Before we go into the specifics of our request, I'd like to talk a little bit about something that I think a lot about this day and age, and that's the future of work. You have heard me say before there's a direct link between education attainment and economic advancement. What I fret over is how we ensure that university system graduates can compete and thrive as the global economy rapidly evolves. We all know how much the economy has changed in the last 50 years, even in the last 10. Technology isn't altering the nature of work. It has already done so and will continue to do so at an even faster rate. Digitization has sped up the displacement of jobs, and that displacement is projected to more than double over the next decade. The productivity gains from technology are startling and even unsettling, and innovators are not always welcomed. In 1586, Anton Moeller invented a loom that replaced tasks done by hand weavers. When Moeller sought a patent, the local council, fearful of the reaction from weavers, supposedly ordered that Moeller be strangled, which surely put a damper on further innovation. But new technologies increase production, generate wealth, and improve quality of life. In recent years, advances in artificial intelligence have transformed fields once thought immune to such change. SAM 100, a bricklaying robot, can place more than 3,000 bricks in an 8-hour shift, 5 to 10 times faster than a human can. One international construction company can foresee that as soon as 2050, construction sites could be free of human workers. Computers conduct cognitive tasks now that even 10 years ago we thought impossible. One national bank uses an AI program to review commercial loan documents in a few seconds, a task it estimates would take human lawyers 360,000 hours. Due to advances in AI, machines now can diagnose cancer and eye and heart diseases as quickly and as accurately as their human counterparts. Dartmouth College, the birthplace of artificial intelligence, awards prizes to machine-written poems and stories that most resemble ones written by humans. The area of affective computing develops machines that understand human emotions. A Chinese professor at Sichuan University uses one to analyze if his students are bored. Maybe, Mr. Chairman, I need one when I speak to the committee. One last example. Pepper is a human-like robot that analyzes emotions by the tone of one's voice. Pepper was first introduced into mobile phone stores in Japan a few years ago. Customers interact with Pepper as they would any human store representative. As with humans, the contacts don't always go well. In one instance, a highly inebriated customer actually attacked Pepper when he became annoyed with the robot's responses. The man was arrested and explained he got angry at Pepper because, quote, he didn't like his attitude. We all know productivity gains through technological advances have forever altered the economic landscape, both by improving many areas of our lives, but also rendering large numbers of jobs obsolete. Manufacturing in the U.S., for example, produces 70% more than it did in 1986, but with 30% fewer workers. In 1964, AT&T was the most valuable U.S. company, employing almost 760,000 people. Last year, the most valuable company was Microsoft, which employed 131,000 people, and it did not even exist in 1964. Social media companies paint an almost ridiculous picture of these phenomena. Facebook bought Instagram in 2012 for $1 billion. Anyone know how many employees Instagram had at the time? 13. Just 13. As more jobs are automated, experts say that by 2030, at least a third of U.S. workers will need to change jobs and significantly upgrade their skills. For kids in elementary school, as adults, 65% of them will hold jobs that don't even exist today. This is the future of work. It is exciting and it is uncertain. What I fret about is how do we ensure our graduates are ready for this world? Employers tell us graduates must possess critical thinking skills and be committed to lifelong learning. That is harder to achieve than just saying it. The learning process takes time due to the nature of the brain, and we have not yet learned how to accelerate it. More than anything else, graduates must be adaptable to rapidly changing circumstances. Let me give you an example. There's a gentleman riding through rural Georgia in his pickup truck on a gravel road. A deer ran out in front of him. He hit the brakes, truck slid in the ditch. He got out trying to figure out how to get the truck out of the ditch. He was standing there looking at it, and this three-legged pig wandered over. Looked at the truck, looked at the driver, kind of motioned for the driver, get behind the truck, helped him push the truck out of the ditch. The guy's standing there like, wow, this is amazing. The farmer walked up, and he asked the farmer, is that your pig? And he said, yes, it is. And the driver said, well, he's amazing. He helped me get my truck out of the ditch. And the farmer said, well, that's nothing. Last week, the neighbor's house caught on fire. In the middle of the night, pig rushed in, woke up the family, rescued them, saved their lives. The driver's like, I'm just awed. That's really some pig that you have. And the guy said, well, a month ago, a child in the neighborhood fell in a pond. Couldn't swim. Pig dove in, saved the child. So the driver's amazed. He said, I just can't get over this. He said, but I noticed he's only got 3 legs. Well, why does he only have 3 legs? And the farmer said, when you got a pig like that, you only want to eat him a little bit at a time. So adaptability is important. The data make it clear that education beyond high school is essential to have a realistic chance to compete today. Coming out of the Great Recession, the U.S. economy produced 11.6 million new jobs. 99% went to workers with some sort of post-secondary education. And almost 3/4 of those jobs, 70%, went to folks with a bachelor's degree or higher. To further underscore the critical need for education attainment, in 1973, nearly 75% of all jobs in the U.S. could be secured with a high school diploma. Today, that percentage is 36%. And over the next 5 years, jobs in Georgia requiring a bachelor's degree will grow by 26%. Yet out of 50 states, Georgia ranks 31st in the percentage of the population with a post-secondary credential at just over 39%. So education attainment matters. By now you're asking, what are you doing about it? We work with employers more closely than we ever have. We create curriculum in consultation with industry in fields like logistics, cybersecurity, and healthcare. We created the FinTech Academy, accessible to students anywhere in Georgia, also in conjunction with industry. We launched College 2025 with leaders from academic as well as industry to chart our future. It has led to the creation of the first of its kind Nexus degree, a targeted degree of 18 hours for students at any stage of their career if they have passed core courses. We make sure course credits transfer. We have a group working on modernizing the core curriculum, again with input from industry, so we ensure students are developing those analytical skills that they need. We support first-year students as part of our Momentum Year to ensure they take more hours, pass English and math, and select a field of study when they enroll. We know from our data that when students do these things, they are far more likely to graduate, and graduating is the goal. We are urging campuses to tailor degrees to the needs of their surrounding communities, including almost 20 new bachelor's degrees in rural Georgia for disciplines such as agribusiness, education, and long-term health care management. And this is why we are investing in an increased number of healthcare workers, especially through programs that focus on our areas of the state that have the most critical need for them. We are encouraged by the early results. Since 2011, we have seen a nearly 24% increase in the number of degrees awarded annually by our institutions. During that same time, our enrollment has grown only 3.4%. The rate of awarding degrees is growing much faster than enrollment, and that is exactly what we want. We've also become more efficient. We spend 6% less to graduate a student compared to 2008, adjusted for inflation. This means we are graduating more students and spending less per degree to do it. Not so long ago, if you were taking a road trip, you went to a bookstore and bought a map. And if you could figure out how to fold it and unfold it, relied on it for direction. I don't remember the last time I looked at a paper map. We are thinking about these challenges and these changes and trying to act to address them. We appreciate your support. We have much work to do together, and we cannot get better without your guidance. We're grateful to you for your long-standing investment and support of the university system and look forward to working with you this session. Tracy Cook, our Executive Vice Chancellor, will present the specifics of our budget and we'll be happy to take questions. Ian.
Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you, Chairman Hill. Thank you, Chairman England and General Assembly committee members for having us here today. Today, I will begin with the fiscal year amended budget and then move on to the FY fiscal year 21 budget. Let's see if I can get this right. The fiscal year 2020 amended budget includes a net reduction of $23.8 million in state funds for the University System of Georgia. This is passed on through our institutions as well as our pass-through organizations. Today I'll discuss a few items in the budget. Institutions develop plans to address the reduction that was proposed in the budget. The budget includes $14 million in reductions specifically for B units associated with the University System of Georgia. We will continue to work with the Office of Planning and Budget to better understand the recommendations in the budget. The next item is the removal of an addition at the Enterprise Innovation Institute in the amount of $250,000 per the instructions of OPB. We are holding these funds aside to be returned as appropriate. The amended budget also includes a reduction of $9.6 million to correct the credit hours included in the formula for fiscal year 20 in the original budget. The need for this correction was identified at the beginning of the fiscal year, and institutional budgets were adjusted accordingly. Again, these funds are being held back and are ready to be returned accordingly. The recommendations also include a $656,000 adjustment for the DOAS premiums, which have been seen in other agencies' budgets. And lastly, there is a net decrease of $604,000 for our pass-through organizations and attached agency, that being the Georgia Military College and the Georgia Public Telecommunications. Moving on to the 21 budget, the governor recommended a total net increase in state funds to the university system of $60.8 million to support the university. The recommendations will be covered over the next two slides. This first slide lists the adjustments to what we call our formula funding or our teaching program. And the second slide that you'll see will show all of the adjustments to the other attached organizations, or what we refer to as our B units and pass-through organizations. In the interest of time, I won't go through every item on the slide, but I will be happy to take any questions. So I'd like to take a minute to provide a brief overview of our funding formula as it drives a significant portion of the budget request. The majority of the funds that are provided from the state are provided through the funding formula. And this formula forms the basis for the budget request each year. The primary driver or the primary input into this formula is enrollment, specifically the number of credit hours taken by our students. Credit hours from the most recently finished fiscal year are used in the formula, which means that the formula is always on a 2-year lag. So fiscal year 19 credit hours, which were earned in summer of 18, fall of 18, and spring of 19, are the basis for our fiscal year 21 request. So in fiscal year 19, USG students took over 8.5 million credit hours, which represented a 1.3% increase over the prior year. So the first item, you'll see the governor recommended $76 million in enrollment growth and medical education funding. And these funds support the needs in the areas of faculty, advisement, and other services that promote the student success for our institution, for our growing student body. The recommendation also includes $1.4 million for maintenance and operation for increased academic facilities across our campuses. And these funds provide funding for plant expenditures such as utility, custodial, building maintenance, and other facility expenditures. The recommendation also includes a $16.6 million reduction for the TRS rate change. The Teachers Retirement Board met in May and voted to decrease the contribution rate from 21.14% to 19.6%, and by doing so, the contributions that's required to TRS has now gone down, and this represents the decrease to the budget. The recommendation includes $9.6 million to support the employer's share of increased health costs for our employees as well. The recommendation includes $3.6 million to provide $1,000 to employees paid $40,000 or less for formula-funded employees. The recommendation includes $4.5 million to support payments by the institutions to the teachers' retirement system for a subset of our employees that participate in the optional retirement plan or ORP program. Beginning in fiscal year 21, the university system will be required to remit these payments to TRS, but only for the ORP members that originally moved from the TRS system back in the early 90s. And this will be our first payment into this plan for these employees since 2001. The recommendation includes $1.3 million in funding to support the Augusta University of Georgia Medical Partnership expansion. And this is the second year of a 4-year startup timeline to fund the increase in the entering class, moving it from 40 students to 60 students beginning fall 2021. And it should be noted that the expansion of this partnership is already well underway with the approval from the accrediting body and the renovation of Russell Hall on the Health Sciences campus at UGA. The next slide continues the recommendations for all programs outside of the teaching program. The fiscal year 21 budget recommendations include a reduction of $18.6 million. Again, for the 21 budget, institutions developed reduction plans, and they were submitted to the Office of Planning and Budget. These plans were accepted by our institutions and submitted and sent to OPB, we will again continue to work with the Office of Planning and Budget regarding the reductions that are included in the recommendations. One other item I want to point on this slide is that the recommendation includes a transfer of state funds from the Department of Agriculture to the Board of Regents to consolidate funds for the Athens-Tipton Diagnostic Laboratories into one program. This recommendation stems from the analysis that was done by the Office of Planning and Budget through the zero-based budgeting program. These funds were previously appropriated directly to the Department of Agriculture and then paid to the Athens-Tifton Vet Lab to UGA through a contract. And so this transfer is simply to consolidate the funds, and there will be no changes to any of the activities. So many of the other items on the slide reflect similar items that were already discussed on the teaching program. But I do want to say that the operating funds that are recommended in the governor's budget are vital to the success of our more than 333 students across our 26 campuses. With that, I will move into the capital recommendation. This slide shows the recommendation for the fiscal year 21 capital budget. The first item is very important to us that I want to highlight is major repair and rehabilitation, what we refer to as MRR funding. And these funds are used to invest in our existing facilities and infrastructure at every institution. So every institution shares in this funding. MRR goes a long way in addressing the backlog of capital needs and updating existing facilities to meet current educational and safety demands. MRR funds help keep existing buildings maintained and decreases our need for new construction. The current backlog is estimated at approximately $260 million, and this is based on a 3-year list of projects that are provided by our institution. The major categories that these funds support are HVAC, roofing, regulatory requirements, electrical, street, and drainage challenges. The governor's recommendation also includes $22.2 million for equipment funds for 7 projects that were previously funded for design and construction. So these projects are currently being constructed and or renovated now, and this is the request for the next stage to equip these projects. So these are the 7 projects that we're requesting funding, and it's being recommended. The next slide shows includes the recommendation of $93 million to support 3 construction projects. These will be new projects. All of these projects will be supported by a combination of either private donation and or other funds outside of the GO bonds. This definitely helps to advance these projects. Each construction project will have a direct impact on student success. At Georgia Tech, the funding will support the 3rd phase of its development at Technology Square, what we refer to as Tech Square. It's a 420,000 square foot building that will house the School of Industrial Systems and Engineering, an expansion of the College of Business, and it will also house a number of Georgia Tech as well as State of Georgia programs that are currently occupying lease space nearby to the campus. At the University of Georgia, the Interdisciplinary STEM Research Building 2 will complement the STEM 1 facility and provide an additional 100,000 square feet to support UGA's robust and expanding lab-intensive and interdisciplinary activities. And finally, at University of North Georgia, this is a project to construct a 91,000 facility called the Mike Contrell College of Business on the Dahlonega campus. And this project will be supported by $10 million in private donations. The last recommendation on this slide is $2.2 million in design funds for the Poultry Science Complex at UGA, and this 75,000 square foot facility is proposed for poultry science instruction and research, and the space will include labs, classroom, wet labs for research offices, as well as collaborative study and workspace. Going back to recap the total capital projects, you'll see the last 2 projects, again, are recommended for pass-through agencies to include the Georgia Research Alliance as well as the Georgia Military College. Each of the projects that we've discussed for our institutions have been developed in collaboration with our institutional leadership, as well as the Office of Real Estate and Facilities at the System Office. We maintain a long-term capital plan, which is the foundation for the annual capital budget requests. The overall objective of the USG capital planning and budgeting is to meet the needs of the system within the context of funding available. And our focus is always space utilization and renovating facilities to meet our needs. Our capital request also includes 13 small capital projects, 6 design projects, and 1 construction project that's not included in the recommendation. We can provide additional information as needed and look forward to working with you on these projects. This concludes the operating and capital budget recommendation overview. I do want to echo the Chancellor's comments that we're very thankful to Governor Kemp, to his team, as well as the General Assembly for your continued support of higher education. And with that, the Chancellor and I would be happy to answer any questions of the committee.
Okay, Representative Knight, question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Chancellor, congratulations on the addition of your family.
Thank you.
I know it was probably a pretty exciting time, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Your opening monologue reminded me of the opening scene in The Terminator, where the artificial intelligence is trying to do away with us humans. I'm not sure I like that. But all seriousness, Chancellor, thank you for what you do. And thank you to the university system for what they do. They are a shining light. Our higher education in Georgia it is indeed a leader across the United States. So we appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
And the professionalism by which the regents do that.
Thank you.
But I do have some questions in regards to the budget. I've noticed that instead of the 4% and 6% cuts, that on average, it looks like these program cuts are about 5.3% and 7.4% for the respective 20 and 21 years, budget years. How is this going to affect the sustainability of the USG and how that's going to affect the services that we provide?
Thank you, Representative Knight, and I appreciate your comments. We still haven't had a chance to sit down with OPB to get the details of those cuts. They are, as you pointed out, larger than what was submitted. I hope by the end of this week, certainly by the time your subcommittee starts working, we'll have answers to those questions, and we'll be prepared to answer that question in detail.
Okay. One follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chairman. And again, I'm just very curious upon cursory review of this. It does appear that the blunt of these cuts, somewhere around 60%, that's probably my wife that's trying to text me, I'm sorry, it appears to be coming from the B budget, which is, our agricultural and research parts of what we do from the university system. How is that going to affect, our rural Georgia and a lot of our agricultural support services?
As you know, the cuts were applied to the non-teaching part of the budget, and as I said, once we learn more details about those cuts, how they were arrived at, and how they will be spread within each unit, I'll be able to come back with you more specific answers. And we'll be able to come back with a plan about how we'll be able to deal with those cuts if they go through that way.
Thank you, Chancellor.
Thank you.
Representative Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chancellor. Appreciate you being here. A couple quick questions. I noticed a pretty large transfer from teaching to the central office. It's around $68 million, it looks like. Could you speak to that specifically and why we're taking that from teaching and sending it to the central office and what the purpose of that is?
I think that's also a result of the zero-based budgeting process within OPB that was conducted between last session and the beginning of this session. Those are funds that probably for, 15, 20 years have been used in the system office to support a variety of teaching aspects. Probably half of the money is for a centralized IT operation that we have, which is in Athens. And it carries out centralized functions for financial aid, registration, admissions, purchases, licensing of software, manages our cloud effort in that area. And because we're able to do it at scale, we're able to save money rather than now 26 different institutions purchasing and managing that software. We're able to do it at the system level. We've also moved in the last 8 or 10 years from what used to be 35 different payroll systems to in March we'll be down to 1. So it's a part of supporting the system that we do centrally because we feel like it's more efficient. We feel like we're able to save money that way. I'll give you one example. Just past year we moved to a software program called Campus Logic to help us work with every student about their borrowing and debt and how to avoid doing that and borrowing more if they've borrowed some. Because we did it at the system level, we were able to save about 20% rather than doing it at 26 different locations. The effort's been underway for many years. OPB, I think, felt like, and again, we haven't had a chance to talk with them, that money better reflected being pulled out of where it was, and that was part of the zero-based budgeting process.
Okay. And just one more follow-up, Mr. Chairman. Quick. Just another added comment on our ag experiment stations and cooperative extension. You talked about adaptability earlier today, and I know you know this, but that's where our farmers and the people of rural Georgia obtain their adaptability. and that's been the only thing that's gotten them to where they are today and been able to get them through the hurricanes and disasters and trade wars and become more efficient and more effective. And I hope you and your folks will continue to work hard with OPB to help us get through this and get that straightened out, and appreciate what you do.
Yes, sir, thank you. And they are very important programs. We have a tripartite mission, as they say, teaching, research, and service, and those programs are part of the service aspect. And I think the state of Georgia is one that maintains those far more than many other states. I'm very committed to them, I believe in them, and I think they continue to make a difference across the state. So we look forward to working with you on that.
Chancellor, unfortunately, we've got 4 or 5 other questions, but we've run out of time. In fact, we're over now. So I'm going to ask the rest of you if you would catch the Chancellor outside and ask your questions so we can get on with our program.
I'd be glad to.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all very much.
Next speaker is going to be the brand new Commissioner of the Department of Technical Colleges. Been in about every area of state government one time or another. Commissioner, we're glad to have you today. Congratulations on your new assignment. We look for great things out of technical colleges under your leadership. Thank you very much for being here.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity. It's always an honor to come and speak before the General Assembly. You guys know I started with you many, many years ago, and it's just always nice to come back before you and present. I do have the honor today to be representing, 20-something days into the position, but I've had a great staff that's been along my side in these few days, and hopefully they've prepared me to represent well before you as a group, and I look forward to answering those questions. As we look through the budget today, I hope to give you some numbers that you can use, and obviously as we look at the budget, very willing to answer any questions. The other thing that I will mention throughout this meeting is my board members. I've had my first board meeting, and just a great board of folks are representing this state for the technical college system, and I'll mention a couple of them through this presentation. As you'll see, our mission is to build well-educated, globally competitive workforce through technical education, adult education, and customized training for our Georgia businesses and industries. To kind of give you an idea of those 3 areas, that's technical education, adult education, and economic development. And to really kind of put a story behind the picture, in the middle you see a young lady, Simone Crane. She was our 2019 Eagle Award winner. And that's really what it's all about. As someone who was struggling with her stories about substance abuse, struggling with the challenges of day-to-day, and she came and got her GED, and now she's working on an associate's degree in psychology. And it's just neat to see those in our communities finding their way. We have 22 colleges and 88 campuses across the state, and to further dive into it, we're serving about 356,000 individuals. When you break that down, it's 140,000 in technical education. That's our certified and degreed programs. We have over 600 different programs in that category. We're serving in adult education, both GED prep, literacy, LR, ABE, GED. We're serving about 47,000 individuals in that area. We're serving the community in economic development, providing customized training to our local companies in the area that really need a boost in maybe leadership development. It may be some soft skills. It may be some specialty skills as far as mechatronics or something of that nature. But we're partnering in each and every community to provide those skill sets. We're serving about 25,000 through our Quick Start program. As you guys know, just as we've been named the #1 place to do business, Quick Start's a big part of that, and they've been named the #1 program of its sort for the last, I believe, 10 years, if I remember correctly. And that's a qualification done by all of the site selectors out there. And we serve 21,000 through workforce development. The exciting thing that we look at, and I look forward to learning more about these percentages, is our placement rate. Not only are we serving a lot in your community, but they're having success once they've been served. So 88.6% are placed in field, meaning they actually are doing something with a certification or training that they have been given in the technical college. And 99% are either placed or they're continuing their education. So we've had great success rate in making sure that those that touch our system see where they're going. Additionally, we try to warranty. That's something I don't think our companies and our communities realize, that if someone goes through training in the technical college and the employer's not happy with it, we can come back within a 2-year period and retrain for free. So we warranty that training that we provide. I do have to caution, because I don't know the gentleman that's in the picture. I was like, well, did we retrain him? So I got a little nervous when I saw that. He did not get retrained. He is a student that went through the medical area at Columbus Tech, and he is actually working in field at the local hospital and being very successful. But this is where I get real interested, and probably where you do too. When we look at where is the gap and what do we need to fill, and you know this just from touch points in your community, when you look at what the skill is, looking at Georgia data, and this was from the National Skills Coalition, looking at Georgia specifically. The middle skills job, those are those that do not need a 4-year degree, but need more than just a high school graduation. There's a 55% need in the labor market in Georgia. But right now we only have 43% of our population that meets that area. So that's part of my charge as I come into this, is I've got to figure out how to narrow that gap. And that's something, as I come before you next year and future years, I hope we can start seeing that narrow. That's my goal. And we're going to have more goals than that, but that's a big one. That also means that we're still being the place to do business. We got to have the labor force and the workforce to attract businesses. You guys have been great partners. As we look at our high demand career fields, you know that those are the areas that Hope Career Grant qualifies. But we have 17 areas. Under those 17 areas, one of the things I did not know till I came into this position, you probably do know, but there's a host of different specific areas under those areas. So don't get caught up that it's just a generic welding. It may be 3 or 4 different classes we offer under welding for specialty that fit in this category. So these are an important area to our communities, to our industries, and to us. And to give you an idea of what that skill set looks, we threw up some pictures. You know, we're not the technical college of old. When you look in the top right, you're looking at robotics, the top left, bioscience, the bottom, cyber, and the bottom left, mechatronics. So these are some very innovative skills that we're training, and high job paying skills that we're training. As you know, Quick Start last year did 64 projects, trained over 25,000 employees, and obviously this is Kia and one of the standout projects that we have in this state that's been here for a while, but that's just a great example of what we do in each and every community throughout the state. The other thing, I spent the morning over at Quick Start getting a good feel, and I think it was 69% of our Quick Start projects are outside the metropolitan area. So as we look at the state as a whole, I was real proud to find out that our Quick Start partners are trying to make sure that we're out in the entire state, not just one area. Economic development, we hit that already, but just to re-hit it, we have 24,000 companies, 159 counties, and 120,000 trainees in these communities. Something that's really catching fire, and that's our apprenticeship program. 571 apprenticeships out there. That's something very important to our workforce. They get not only the training, but they're getting on-the-job training as they get that certificate. Our military members, over 12,000 military members served. We have the Vector Center, but we also have green zones in every single college to where if someone who served in our military is in our college and needs support services, they can get them at our college campuses. Very proud, one of our board members, Jay Cunningham with Superior Plumbing. He donated $75,000. That's how involved our board members are up in the Chattahoochee Tech facility, and it's named in honor of his father, a veteran, Jim Cunningham, and we're providing services there. And that just shows how integrated our board members are as well. Adult education, 470 sites, 10,000 graduates. That does not include those that are going through LR and ABE. Those are just those that attain that high school equivalency. So we're touching the lives of over 47,000 individuals and making a difference in their lives. Hopefully you saw the press release this morning that was in the AJC. One of the things that we've looked at is bringing in the HiSET testing and also doing Career Plus. Career Plus is a mechanism to where they can have high school courses that they've passed, along with portions of GED that they've passed, along with actual certification training to actually attain that high school equivalency and get them in the workforce and make sure they have that skill set to change their lives and their families' lives. I think that's going to be a difference maker as we continue to see the results of that. The Office of Workforce Development, we've touched it already with over 21,000 individuals touched as well. In that we have those that are underemployed, those that are unemployed, youth, and we also have dislocated workers. So someone has to shut down a portion of their operation. We'll come in and help out with that dislocated worker in that area. In looking at the budget, we have the highlight here, and obviously we'll answer any question. I'll answer any questions you may have. Overarching in the AFY 2020 budget, the bottom line reduction was $2.1 million, as you see on the screen, across the multiple programs that we have. To give you a high-level overview of it, I think the Chancellor mentioned this, but the DOAS self-insurance premiums makes up $96,000 add for that. The Department of Admin made up the substantial portion of that $2.1 million cut, over right at $800,000 in personal services and just over $22,000 in travel. So we tried to take it at the system office versus at our schools. Adult ed is about $676,000 of that total number. And that is going to change our delivery mechanism a hair, meaning that part of our announcement today on the HiSET and the Career Plus, I think will give us a larger delivery model to offset any type of changes that the adjunct instructors and things of that nature have an impact from this 600. So I think we're not going to have an impact in our service. I believe we can maintain even with this reduction. There's a small cut of $31,000 related to just a delayed occupancy of the Cedartown Career Center. That has been completed and will be fully up and running come July 1st. Economic development, last year you were fortunate enough to give us 4 consultants, 2 for welding and 2 for industrial maintenance. Those are really positions that are out consulting statewide to work with local economic development. We're going to lose those in this, but we believe from a system office we can still support those efforts and still have that impact of coordinating it statewide and having the impact we were looking for. And then the quick start reduction is about $453,000. That's what makes up a global look of that $2.1 million when you cut across the programs. In looking at the fiscal year 2021 budget, there'll be a lot of the similar things I mentioned, so I'll point out very quickly the similar things, but hit on a couple of unique things. When you look at just the system changes that all state agencies had with the pay raise, the TRS changes, the cyber insurance, the generic things that you're going to see in each and every budget. That makes up about a $749,000 reduction. If you look at the personal services cut that we mentioned last in the AFY, the $800,000 reduction in admin, it'll be $1.3 million in the big budget, $116,000 in travel, and just over $70,000 for computer and software for about $1.4 million. We also are seeing a transfer, just as you asked a question to the Chancellor about a transfer, you'll see in our budget a transfer of about $20 million. That $20 million does not change the result. It's from tech ed into admin. And I believe, just as the Chancellor mentioned, it's a look at how we should see support functions at system office. So what I mean by that is there's about, in that $20 million, there's about $8 or so million, and we'll have the exact numbers, Mr. Chairman, for the for the committee hearing. About $8 million or so that's actually personnel that works at headquarters office but works on curriculum and things of that nature in the past that was actually associated with the program of technical education, that as we look at it is being moved into department admin just because of a restructuring on how we see those costs, along with a lot of support functions like Banner, our systems out there. So that $20 million doesn't have a direct impact on student It just has an impact on where we're seeing those costs, whether it's in technical education or in admin. The remaining two items are just to carry on from the other one, and that's Quick Start. Instead of the 4% at 400, the 6% is 680,000. And then the last item that we truly appreciate is the formula funding that was mentioned. We had a slight increase in credit hours of 1.5%. We also had a slight decrease of 0.3% in our square footage. When you take those two numbers, it was a $3.7 million add for credit hours and a reduction of $193,000 for square footage in the formula, for an add of $3.5 million in our technical education program for the formula. At the end of the day, the bottom line is a $708,000 reduction, and we believe we can still provide services with the budget as submitted. The final item is the bond package. We have $10 million for MR&R and $10 million for equipment. I believe that's fairly standard over the years, just to keep us going. Just to give you an idea, when you look at all 22 colleges and 88 campuses, we have about valued about $2.8 billion worth of with structure, with about 13 million square feet when you look across there, just to give you an idea of our footprint as far as structures go. The two items that we got in the bond package was to provide furniture and fixtures for Wiregrass, Georgia, and West Georgia. You guys were fortunate enough to fund us those two facilities in past years, and this just gets us up and running. And then the additional item of Gwinnett Technical College, and it's a renovation and addition for $34.8 million. And that facility provides training for cyber, engineering, and several other different technical certifications in that building. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Senator Lucas, you have a question? Okay. Representative Stovall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. I definitely commend you all on the great work that you're doing for technical college. I do have a question in reference to the type of support that's given to each technical college when it comes to marketing about the high career demand programs, the dual enrollment, and for the apprenticeship programs. And kind of more so on a more grassroots perspective. I know you all have done some commercials, I've seen all of that, but a lot of times I've found in the communities I represent is that they don't understand. So being able to actually get down on the ground with letting them know about all the great things that you all have to offer. And the other thing was that I know there was a request put in for a one-stop for Atlanta Technical College, and I do want to thank you all for us having that satellite campus of Atlanta Technical College in Clayton County.
Thank you for those comments, and obviously that's something we're trying to dig into to make sure that we're marketing correctly, that the communities know what we offer, and also our industries. What I'm finding is the industries we work with love our local colleges, and we provide a great value, but there's so many of our industry partners that really aren't sure what we provide. So very proud of our college presidents. Each one of them I've gotten to know so far, I think, have a heart for what we do and want to make a difference in those communities and align their priorities with the community's priorities. But I'll check into both of those things.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Knight.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, glad to have you aboard. Look forward to working with you. I know we had a brief conversation the other day and very much enjoyed it. Along the lines of that conversation and the presentation that you've made today, we talked about some of the high demand fields, if you will. And I know the General Assembly has put in resources to try to address those high demand areas like welding, and I see in the budget, we've got some cuts there. We also talked about some of the electricians, plumbers, and things that, quite frankly, we're hearing from the workforce that said there's not enough people to fill the jobs. How will these cuts, or reductions in some of these customized services, how will it affect the training in those fields, and how will it affect the workforce?
Yeah.
And can we handle that?
Yeah, great question. We've been very blessed when it comes to our colleges that the governor exempted the actual colleges from any reductions. So we not only were exempt from that, but he's recommended the $3 million increase for the formula. So I believe from a localized standpoint, you won't miss a beat. There are some areas when you look at Quick Start. Obviously, we got to look and see as we're bringing in new businesses and helping those expanded businesses. We believe that the 400 and 600,000 cut are doable, and we'll be able to continue to provide those services. But obviously, as we bring in businesses throughout the state, that's an area that we're going to be looking at and watching and see how we can actually maximize our resources in that area. But we've been very, very blessed for your local colleges to actually be to not have any cuts in those areas.
I think that's about all the questions that I have here. If we missed you something, just catch the commissioner on his way out. We're going to move right ahead and try to get through. So, Commissioner, thank you very much for being here today. Appreciate the presentation. Everybody got quiet. Here you go. Our next speaker is going to be Stephanie Johnson, speaking for the Student Finance. I'm sorry, Chief Turnaround Office. Going to speak for the turnaround office. So, Superintendent, welcome back. Glad to have you again.
Yes, if you don't mind, please.
Just been off and on all day.
Mr. Chairman, again, thank you for the opportunity. I know in some of your schedules it may have showed either Dr. Thomas, our CTO, or either Stephanie Johnson be present, but it's my privilege to be with you today to bring you an update regarding the Chief Turnaround Office. In 2017, House Bill 338 established the position of the Chief Turnaround Officer. The CTO is hired by and reports to the State Board of Education and is tasked with creating a system of supports and assistance for Georgia's lowest performing schools. Dr. Eric Thomas was hired by the State Board of Education in October 2017 and has served in that capacity for just over 2 years. Beginning in the fall of 2019, the Georgia Department of Education began receiving multiple complaints filed by current and former employees of the Chief Turnaround Office. Doing our due diligence to ensure the appropriate expenditure of taxpayer funds and faithful adherence to state policies and laws, I directed the department's internal auditors to conduct an investigation. The internal audit team delivered their report to the State Board of Education on Wednesday, January 22nd. On Friday, January 24th, the State Board voted unanimously to initiate the following: to accept the resignation letter submitted by Dr. Thomas, to refer the auditor's report to Georgia's Office of Inspector General for further investigation, to place Dr. Thomas on administrative leave effective immediately, and to appoint Dr. Stephanie Johnson as acting Chief Turnaround Officer. This is obviously a difficult development and one which I do not relish. Because the audit has been turned over to the Inspector General and remains part of an ongoing investigation, I am unable to comment further on those matters specifically. What I am able to do, however, is to provide information on a plan we set forth at the Department of Education to ensure the essential work of supporting schools and students is not disrupted. And that continues to be our focus at the Department of Education. It is first and foremost the children. We are making sure that no services are being interrupted at this time and will continue to have a high degree of service. But all of this work, again, rests on the foundation of the belief that I know we all share, and that is every child in Georgia deserves an excellent education. It's our responsibility as a state to provide service, support, and resources so all students can succeed. The CTO serves a small subset of schools on a separate turnaround eligible list. The CTO currently serves 13 schools in 7 school districts. 8 of those schools initially selected by the program's Cohort 2 chose to withdraw from the program by the spring of 2019. This is a subset of roughly about 94 schools that could have been, or on that list and could have been selected. The spirit of the legislation was to layer on additional supports for very low performing schools, but in practice, many of the services already offered by DOE School Improvement were duplicated by the CTO. Given recent developments, we are taking immediate action to ensure the work of turning around schools continues and resources are deployed in the most effective way. I am confident that we can serve these 13 schools with the high quality of service we have offered to the federally identified schools. Dr. Stephanie Johnson, DOE's Deputy Superintendent for School Improvement, will serve as acting Chief Turnaround Officer effective immediately, by offering this immediate buy-in and respect for those in the field. I do not think you will find anyone more respected in the area of turning around and addressing high needs education than Dr. Johnson. Again, an individual that I met during my time when she was serving as principal at Maynard Jackson, and again, an individual that I have frequently shared that it was my desire to have her on board for the great work and again what she could add and the value to the department itself. Dr. Johnson has proven experience. She turned around 3 Georgia schools as a principal and was named the Georgia Principal of the Year and a finalist for National Principal of the Year. She is known throughout the state for being energetic, hands-on, practical, and promoting a sense of urgency. Dr. Johnson will be implementing the proven strategies that have produced strong results with our federally identified schools. She will be visiting all turnaround schools to see what is happening on the ground. She'll have candid conversations with district and school leaders, teachers, students, community members, and RESAs with the goal of learning what's working and what's not, and the quality of service and support being offered. All turnaround coaches will complete, and again, these are members of the turnaround office, but all turnaround coaches will complete the same high-quality, nationally recognized training program that all school improvement and RESA coaches have completed. Turnaround literacy coaches will go through GOSA's high-quality growing readers training. We'll work to remove administrative layers and instruct staff to spend more time directly serving schools. And we'll establish a new rapid response team by evaluating and repurposing existing positions to develop teams of expertise and experience that can provide intensive support to the most struggling schools. These teams will be in schools up to 4 days a week. CTO schools will also have access to supports from DOE Office of School Improvement, including school and district assigned improvement coaches, strategic evidence-based school improvement plans, and a school improvement dashboard that helps schools and district leaders harness their data for improvement. Excuse me. It's important to ensure that our conversations about school improvement are driven by data and results. As you can see here, the CTO currently serves 13 schools compared to the 164 schools in the lowest 5% that are served by school improvement. That translates to approximately 6,000 students impacted within the CTO schools and approximately 101,000 for school improvement. CTO schools have had an average improvement of 2.4 years on our accountability measure from 2018 to 2019. Turnaround eligible schools served solely by the DOE school improvement team have an average of 5.7 points as far as gain on the accountability measure. Given this data, it is our belief that the governor's budget recommendation for the Chief Turnaround Office eliminates duplication, redundancy, provides clear, cohesive, and a more effective strategy for supporting Georgia's lowest schools. It also recognizes effectiveness since schools working with the DOE school improvement have had an average CCRPI increase, again, that's our accountability measure, to ensure that every Georgia student has the opportunity to succeed. Again, at this time, I'll be glad to fill any questions that you might have concerning the CTO program.
Representative Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Superintendent, is that a long way of telling us we went through all that business about the turnaround officer and we're back where we started with the school improvement office that we already had? Is that what you're telling us?
No, ma'am. Again, I think, the legislation and the thing had a great purpose. I'm not knocking and saying this. I'm just trying to reassure everyone in the state that with the transition and the things that have expired over the past few days, that our schools and our students who fall underneath the area of being served underneath the Chief Turnaround Officer, that nothing will be interrupted. That our focus is on making sure that we will serve those students, we will serve those schools with the highest integrity involved, and that we will see gains throughout the state. And again, it's just more of saying that, I want to reassure everyone that, have looked, because again, not going back in history, but saying that from this point and where I know we are today, that we're going to do the job, and our focus is definitely just on our kids and doing the right thing.
One other question, Mr. Chairman. It's a statement, really. Our students in our schools deserve strong, consistent leadership, as opposed to us changing our minds every 2 or 3 years about the direction. And we have children out there that are struggling, and they really need our help, and the adults need to get our acts together in terms of what is our real vision and where we're trying to go.
Representative Al Williams. Okay. Lights on, but nobody's home. Okay. Senator Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I promised I wasn't going to say anything today, but I think I need to say this. Over the years that I've been in the legislature, we've spent millions of dollars, and this is like Representative Hughley, a statement more so than a question, or we've spent millions of dollars trying to provide for struggling schools because they've been struggling a long time. It just didn't happen when the CTO idea came along. We've appropriated and allocated to our RESAs, communities in schools, and other entities that are supposed to provide support services to our teachers and to give them the kind of support, academic support that they need in the classroom, and it's just not happening, and especially in the rural areas. And I do want to thank you for allowing your staff, along with especially Dr. Johnson and Ms. Taylor, to come down this summer and go to my schools at the beginning of school, some that are in critical shape, for lack of a better term here. We've spent so much money, hopefully, just as Representative Hughley says, that we're not going to continue to do this, just waste, waste, waste. We talk about wraparound services. This state is filled with wraparound services. We can't wrap anything else around. And we're still not getting adequate results. So hopefully, somebody is watching and we can get some better results. Everybody that comes to the table to say they want monies, they need money, they just need to work and put the money in the classroom, as Representative Knight has indicated. Put it in the classroom instead of administrative costs. We purchase things, they lay on the shelves, nobody uses them. So we're going to have to get a better handle on the direction that we're going in education in the state of Georgia. But thank you so much, because those ladies were able to see exactly what's happening in rural Georgia when it comes to education. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Superintendent. I just want to follow up. Amen, Senator, what you said there a moment ago. But, you know, Superintendent, you look at, you know, still most concerned with those ones on the far left, you know, our lowest performing schools. And I mean, that's my question. You're removing 7 people. You said they're going to be on the road 4 days a week. And I guess you can hear my passion in this, and that I want to make sure that you've got enough people to do the job, and that the legislature over the past 2 years and 3 that I've been involved had thought this was a critically important thing to do, and we're removing 7 people and dollars that would allow you to do that. And that just concerns me. I hope we can find a way to maybe change that, because I think that's just one of the things that we need to do.
Yes, sir. Well, and again, I think when you look at support and service, you know, I'm just going by what the figures and numbers I have. And again, my point of being here is to reassure you and talking with Dr. Johnson that we have a good team. We have a good plan. You know, it's a support and service and making sure that we have enough and it's adequate. I think you're correct in that and examining that. And I think that's part of the budgetary process of what we're going through. But, you know, for now, until, you know, I'm working on this year and what we're looking at in this half a year. And we're having to make those adjustments and address the needs current in place. And again, I want to assure people that, again, trying to take in whatever, you know, has been out there in the news and things of this nature, you know, these are decisions that have not been made lightly. They are decisions that, you know, have come about that I think in my role that I have to be responsible for the agency as a whole. But at the end of the day, it is still focusing on our kids and making sure our teachers have those resources in place and assure them that they're going to have that support. And that's what I'm pledging to each of you and to all of you around here, that we're going to do the job. You know, I think, you know, trying to get the right people in the right place. And again, Dr. Johnson, I cannot say enough good about her and the staff she has. You know, looking at things, and I look at Macon County, you know, again, one of those rural areas. They've done some tremendous work and really have turned around with the support of Dr. Johnson. As we look and we see things across the state, we're seeing, again, across the board, you know, good trends. And I think that, you know, to being able to support that and look at these schools, you know, I think if we presented all of the data, you know, all the schools are lifting up. I mean, when you talk about, and I'm saying that this is these schools, you know, we're talking about the lowest 5%. At the end of the day, we're always going to have a lowest 5%. What I'm trying to do is making sure what that low 5% looks exceeding good, where any anybody, if they were comparing. That is our job, is to do that. And I feel very confident in what we've gotten, what we've looked at the place. We've looked at some things, initiating some things over the past 2 years that I can assure you that, life prior to Dr. Johnson being on board and life after Dr. Johnson being on board and her team has been truly a great transformation in itself. And so I think that, we have set and we're posed to do some great work. We're going to be involved with these schools, and I invite you, if anyone wants to come down, we'll be glad to have you in there. We'll have you, look at the plan that's going to be involved with that. And so, I said, I don't make excuses for what I have or don't have. Again, I'd always like to make sure we have that. But, being an old coach, I never could get to, pick my team and the players that was given to me. But I made the very best to get the very best out of them. And right now, that's what I'm working with. I've got the team that I have, and we're going to get the very best out of them for all our kids in the state of Georgia. And these kids will be served. And I think in a year's time, you'll be very pleased with what you see.
Representative Hogle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to reflect back to some of your opening statements in your prior presentation, because I think that they relate to the discussion about turnaround schools, and specifically you rightly highlighted the role of poverty. You noted that 25% of Georgia's students are food insecure, so not just poor, but food insecure. 38,000 are homeless. It reminded me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where if you don't have your base order needs taken care of, you're not going to get to higher level learning. If I were to guess, if you were to map out where the poverty is that it's not distributed equally, but it's found in clusters. So my question is a macro level question, which is, does the QB as it exists now, and I know we've been talking about this for a long time, does it give the agency the flexibility that it needs to maximize leverage to address the role of poverty, not only at turnaround schools, but overall? Or is it something that we need some more statutory reforms on?
Well, I think, looking at the context, and I want to say I appreciate the fully funding of the QB. That is something that you as a legislative body, this was, I think, enacted around 1985. And so only out of the last 2 years, in context, has it ever been fully funded. But I think that when you look at that, I think that trying to look, and I know some different governors have tried to tackle what QB looks like. The funding formula itself is a 1985 funding formula. Now, I was teaching in the 1980s, and I can assure you things look completely different back then than what they do today. The needs that we face, and again, looking at poverty and, and the impact of, perhaps even looking at what technology. I've shared with individuals, technology back in the 1980s, I didn't have a computer. It was basically, a Ditto Master, an overhead projector, and probably a film strip that I listened to a record, if you remember what a record was, and I heard the bing, and then I, advanced it. And so, those are the challenges that we face today. I think fully funding the formula is great, but at some point we in the state of Georgia probably have to look at revisiting that and just making sure the priorities, again, to your point, gives us the flexibility to meet various needs, and especially in the area of looking at poverty. That definitely is the biggest Achilles heel that we face across the state.
Senator Tippins is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Superintendent, question on the implementation model on the deployment of the people in these schools. Will they be working and based out of Atlanta, or will they be locally based close to these schools in geographic areas?
There are some that are already geographically based down at the school area. There are some that are up here in Atlanta that I think we have to look at repurposing those individuals, so that especially with the creation of really the rapid response team, there may be something where they could be more central located, but at the end of the day, they've got to get in the schools. That's where they're going to make the difference, not up here in the office.
Well, my concern would be that you'd have so much windshield time. I know a great many of the schools that needed the help were in South Georgia, and if they're working out of Atlanta, you're going to burn a lot of time on windshield time and expenses.
Yes, sir.
It just looks to me like it'd make more sense to hire people that are local to the problem.
And again, that's something looking at the budgetary, things we will be reviewing.
Representative Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think several of my questions have somewhat been answered, but thank you for being here to address this issue. And I think you've heard the priority and emphasis of this, some of us on these low schools. And so am I hearing that you do, as far as budgetary planning, do you have the resources to continue this program, keep this program doing presently now? I mean,
Yes, we will be operating under the current budget. So again, looking at that, we will continue with that. Of course, they will now have the support of basically our federal funds as well, and support out of the school improvement area. So we're able to really, leverage what we have in existence, and we'll be, pulling upside these individuals and actually probably enhancing the support they already have.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Superintendent, that appears to be all the questions.
All right.
Are you roasted now on the other side? You said you were
I think
about
I'm
half
well done on both
ago.
sides, so I'm good to go. So,
All right.
but I appreciate it, and thank you all. If we can be of help, let us know.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Next up, and we're on time, so let's keep it going, is Mr. Andy Parsons, who is the Executive Vice President of Student Finance.
Works. This one? That's it.
Mr. Parsons, welcome. Glad you're with us, and the podium is yours.
Good afternoon. Chairman England, members of the House and Senate, it's truly an honor for me to be with you today representing the Georgia Student Finance Commission. My name is Andy Parsons, and I am the Executive Vice President at Georgia Student Finance. As you may or may not be aware, our President, Kaylee Noggle, just last week, at the end of last week, accepted a great opportunity working on Governor Kemp's team, on Governor Kemp's leadership team. And so myself and the team were pinch hitting today, filling in, trying to fill her shoes, and we'll do the best job that we can. I got two people that are very critical to that success with me. Chris Green is our Director of External Affairs. Many of you work with him on a regular basis. Brian Lipton is our Budget Manager, and he and I will be tag teaming the presentation today. So I'll cover a few agency highlights and then turn it over to Brian to kind of step you through our budget requests. I'll start with a little bit of background information. The agency was formed in 1965, and we are the single agency in the state that's charged with the administration of over 20 scholarship grant and loan programs. We have a singular mission to promote and increase access to education beyond high school for Georgians. That's something I'm very passionate about. We have just over 100 employees at GSFC that work every day on that mission. We primarily break out into two different groups. Those folks that are involved with program administration, making sure we are good stewards of the $1 billion that you entrust to us. And the other side of the house is our advocacy and outreach team. And so what we like to say with them is they are out there reaching more students, mamas, daddies, and families, connecting them to the various programs and services that we offer. A few quick highlights from fiscal year 2019. We did serve over 2 million visits to our gafutures.org website. Essentially, that is our web portal by which any of our constituents can come in and gain access to any of the various programs and services that we offer. So we try to drive as much traffic to GA Futures as possible. Through our outreach efforts, we reached over 110,000 students and families through various events around the state. These are apply to college events, FAFSA completion events, financial aid awareness events, high schools, community-based organizations all over the place. So our outreach team is out there reaching students. Our REACH program, we added over 600 additional scholars this year. That takes us just over 2,400 scholars at 154 districts around the state. Very proud of that. Our dual enrollment program, we topped out just over 51,000 students that participated in dual enrollment this year. We'll spend a little more time in a couple slides talking about dual enrollment. We also achieved a pretty significant milestone with $3 billion in our assets under management with our 529 Path to College Savings Plan. So we're pretty proud of that. The last item there is you'll see we dispersed over $888 million in scholarship grants and loans to deserving students around the state. A little bit about the $888 million. As you know, HOPE is our biggest program. Over $724 million of the dollars went to HOPE. $22 million in tuition equalization grants, $28 million in student access loans, $104 million in dual enrollment, $6 million for the various military programs, and about $2.3 million that cover all of our other programs. I've touched on outreach just a little bit. This is a picture of some of our colleagues at those various meetings around the state. This is a lot of the work that we are very focused on, and we have 9 outreach representatives in various districts. If you ever have an event in your area and you think that we would add value to that event, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. This is an area we're trying to grow in, doing more and more events. And so if we have obviously partnerships at high schools, at the colleges, but if you have organizations or meetings that we would be of benefit to, please don't hesitate to reach out. We have an awful lot of good work going on at GSFC, but there's a couple of initiatives that I think are relevant to our conversations today that I want to spend a little bit of time on. One of them is our checks initiative. President Noggle teed this one up last year during this hearing. We had just launched checks. That's our College Hope Eligibility Calculation Service. And this is an initiative that supports the HOPE programs. The first 25 years of HOPE, it was solely the post-secondary institution's responsibility to determine a student's ongoing eligibility. So we have 82 HOPE eligible institutions. At the end of each semester, each one of them calculate GPAs and ongoing eligibility for their students. If there's a change to the HOPE program, all 82 institutions have to go out and figure out how to make the change. So with checks, it became a shared responsibility. So at the end of the term, the colleges provide transcripts to us. We calculate the GPAs and checkpoints. We provide that data back to the colleges. They use it for the future awarding of the students. And so very similar to as we do with the high schools and initial HOPE eligibility, we've been receiving those transcripts from 2007 and determine initial eligibility. We are now continuing to receive those from the high school, and now we receive them also from the college. And so it's a great service that we're able to provide to those colleges. I will say we've just achieved our first year milestone of checks. It's been a very successful initiative. It would not have been successful without the collaboration and partnerships from our partners, the university system, the technical college system, the Georgia Independent College Association. Dr. Baxter is with us today. Much thanks to the Chancellor, Commissioner, Dr. Baxter. Without their support, there's no way we could have done this. Another initiative that is very important, and this is another big statewide initiative, is our dual enrollment application. Now, obviously, there's an awful lot of conversation going on about dual enrollment funding, and that's a very important but separate topic. So this is about the application that those constituents use. And so the way the process currently works is we have, again, this year over 51,000 students that participated. Each of their families have to go in and perform an authorization for them to participate. Their high schools have to go in, add courses that they can take. The colleges have to go in and match those courses. Currently, these are all done in about 3 different systems, and nobody can see what's happening in the other system. There's some bottlenecks. It's just not very optimal for the type of work that we're trying to do. So over these last couple of years, we've received a lot of feedback about how we can improve those systems, and so we're deep into that work. Our new application will launch with the summer term of 2020, which will be our fiscal year 2021. There's a lot of excitement about that. Again, a big initiative, and a lot of thanks go out to our partners at TCSG, USG, the Georgia Independent Colleges Association, as well as the Department of Education. So we're looking forward to that, and I believe next year we'll have a great report for you on the success of the new dual enrollment application. All right, I have breezed through a few agency highlights so we could get to the budget. And as Brian gets ready to come up and speak, I want to give you a few overarching themes, kind of our approach to the budget reduction request. So for us, our 4% and 6%, the good news, we were able to make all of those work without any layoffs or furloughs, first and foremost. Our program budgets, such as HOPE, were exempt, so no cuts to HOPE programs or any of the others. The approach we took was probably very similar to other organizations, but we really took the approach of minimizing the impact, obviously, to our constituents. And we looked for opportunities and ways that we could be more efficient. I'll give you a few examples before I pass it off to Brian. And these are things that you will see reflected in his slides, but hopefully it'll help add a little bit of context. So at Georgia Student Finance, just over the years, we grew 3 separate but small technical assistance groups or call centers. And each one have their own little staffs. They each one have their own constituents and peak seasons. And we had vacancies in each of those shops. So we were able, through a reorganization, to bring those groups into one group, do cross-training, and then eliminate 2 of the vacant positions. That's work that we have just completed. The reorganization was effective January 1st, and so we're starting to see the fruits of those labors. So 2 of the positions you'll see eliminated were vacant positions, but we believe we're still actually better serving our constituents because we've got more resources to handle call volume at the peak times the way that we have it now. That's one of the examples. We have a compliance review team. So each year, 1/3 of the HOPE eligible institutions have to receive a compliance review. So that's anywhere from 28 to 29 institutions a year. So we send a team to 28 or 29 of those institutions all around the state. As you can imagine, the hotels, the travel, the windshield time, as we've just talked about, may or may not be as efficient use of their time. And so what we're piloting this year is what we're referring to as a compliance review using a remote examination, whereby a select group of those institutions will electronically submit their records to us. We'll perform the review on our site at Georgia Student Finance, and then of course we'll communicate with the institutions electronically back and forth. We can do webinars, conference calls, whatever it is that we need to do. So we are piloting that this year. There's significant travel savings that we plan to, that we know that we'll benefit from. And then hopefully this will be a very successful year, and we plan to kind of scale this model a little more in the future years. We had 2 additional vacancies that we did need to refill. These aren't ones that we could do away with, but in these cases, what had happened was we had some retirements, so the salary ranges were a little bit higher. We were able to, with those retirements and those vacancies, we were able to kind of restructure those programs, restructure the roles for those positions. They sat vacant for a couple of months while we were going through the rehiring positions, so we saved a few more dollars, so you'll see that reflected. And just like everybody else, we're going through looking at pretty much every budget line item. Where can we limit the number of people that go to a particular conference or set of meetings, reducing any supplies and printing costs, also restructuring some of our technology contracts. This is the last item I want to touch on just very briefly. In the last amended session, you authorized an additional $605,000 enhancement for us. It was 100% for technology and cybersecurity initiatives. When we got that infusion of funds, we were able to modernize a lot of the software and technology that we use within the Georgia Student Finance enterprise. And as a result, we were able to do away with some of our older technology and some old contracts that we had that were a little more expensive. And so by way of that infusion, it helped to save money this year. And so you will see some of that represented in Brian's slides, again, the technology cuts, but it's largely due to the improvements in the technology based on the funds that you appropriated to us. We're very thankful for. And with that, I'll now turn it over to Brian. At the end, we'll be glad to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you again for the opportunity to present the Commission's budget recommendations. It's an honor to be with you this afternoon. I'm going to walk through the tracking sheet, the program changes in your tracking sheet, and a lot of the context that Andy just provided will be helpful as we go through. The first line item in Commission Administration in Amended 20 is a $58,000 increase for the DOAS self-insurance statewide adjustment. The next 4 changes, number 2 through 5, are going to make up our budget reduction plan, which totals $496,000 in Amended 20. And just to reiterate what Andy had said, all of GSFC's scholarship, grant, and loan programs were exempt from the 4% and 6% reduction plans, which we're very thankful for. So this will be the only program where we'll receive those 4% and 6% reductions. The first change is going to be a $422,000 reduction to personal services, $271,000 from eliminating 5 positions, which will tie back to the reorganizations that Andy had mentioned, and about $151,000 from reducing the starting salaries for 2 positions with long-term employees whose salaries had increased due to years of service, as well as some additional savings while those positions had been vacant. The next line item is going to be $34,000 for regular operating expenses. This is going to be for motor vehicle expenses, registration fees, travel, and printing, with some of that relating to the desk audits that Andy had mentioned. The last two items for commission administration are a $27,000 reduction to computer charges and a $12,000 reduction in contracts. We'll recognize these savings by extending out the timeline on some of our hardware upgrades and restructuring those maintenance contracts that Andy had mentioned, so we can implement these without any impact on our cybersecurity or customer service efforts. So our budget reduction plan, again, requires no employee layoffs, no reduction in service, and most importantly, no reduction in financial aid to students. The total net change to commission administration and amended 20 is $438,000. There are no changes to the next several programs, so we'll move to the HOPE programs, which at first glance appear to be reductions. However, these decreases to the HOPE programs are actually just true-ups to more accurately reflect the projected need. There's no reduction in the award amounts to students, and we're still projecting growth in all the HOPE programs over last year. The first reduction will be in HOPE GED, where we'll see a decrease of $1.5 million, which takes the HOPE GED budget down to about $420,000. That's consistent with the disbursements we've seen in that program over the last 4 years. Our next change will be in HOPE Grant. The disbursements for HOPE Grant in FY19 were about $56 million. The updated projection is $61.7 million, and the base appropriation is $66.2 million. So that $4.5 million reduction is just an adjustment to that updated projection. The two scholarship programs, Hope Scholarship Public and Hope Scholarship Private, each have two line items to show the split between Hope Scholarship and Zell Miller Scholarship, where Zell Miller Scholarship represents the amount paid above and beyond what Hope pays. So in Hope Private, the $930,000 increase to Hope Scholarship and $155,000 reduction to Zell Miller Scholarship net to a program increase of $775,000 to meet the projected need due to some growth in that program. For Hope Public, the $2.2 million decrease to Hope Scholarship and $7.6 million decrease to Zell Miller Scholarship represent to a net program reduction of about $9.9 million. The updated projection is about $693 million on a base appropriation of $703 million. So again, that $10 million is just a true-up to reflect that updated projection. There are no additional amended year changes to GSFC programs, but we have included the program changes for the Non-Public Post-Secondary Education Commission, which is attached to GSFC for administrative purposes. All of their amended year changes are related to their 4% reduction plan, totaling about $70,000 in the amended year. So in summary, we have no changes to GSFC state-funded programs in the amended 20 budget, $15.5 million reduction to lottery funds as a result of our 4% reduction and those adjustments to the HOPE programs, and then the $70,000 reduction to NPEC for a total net decrease of $15.6 million in the amended budget. I'll move along into our FY21 changes. The first four line items for commission administration are all statewide adjustments, starting with a $9,800 decrease to reflect the TRS rate change, a $690 increase to DOAS cybersecurity premiums, and an $85 decrease for the GETS GTA fee. We're very appreciative of the next item, an increase of $5,893 to provide a $1,000 pay raise to employees with current salaries of $40,000 or less. So thank you for that recommendation. The next four items reflect our 6% reduction plan in FY21, which totals $633,000. Of that total, $530,000 ties back to personal services. Most of that is carryover from the reductions in the amended year, but there are additional savings from eliminating 2 more positions that will become vacant following planned retirements in the coming months, and 1 additional salary reduction. The next line item reflects just under $64,000 in reductions to regular operating expenses, a lot of carryover from the prior year. We have decreases for motor vehicle expenses, printing, travel, registration fees, and then in amended year, or in FY21, we're adding some cuts to our advertising and marketing. The $27,000 reduction in computer charge and the $12,000 reduction to contracts are the same as in the amended year. So the total net combined changes to commission administration in FY21 nets is $636,000. We'll again move to the HOPE programs. HOPE GED has the same reduction of $1.5 million in fiscal year 21 as they did in the amended year based on the projected need. The rest of the HOPE programs have increases as a result of projected growth. HOPE Grant has an increase of $245,000. HOPE Scholarship Private has an increase of $4.8 million to HOPE Scholarship and $1.5 million to Zell Miller Scholarship, which nets to a program increase of $6.2 million. And HOPE Public, we're continuing to project strong growth, $44.3 million increase to HOPE Scholarship and $5.1 million increase to Zell Miller Scholarship, which nets to a total program increase of about $49.4 million. NPEC's line items in FY21 are all attributable to their statewide adjustments and their 6% reduction plan, totaling about $72,000, a reduction of about $72,000 in FY21. So in summary, there is no increase to GSFC State General Fund again in FY21, an increase of $53.8 million to lottery funds resulting from our 6% reduction plan, and an increase to HOPE programs based on projected program growth. About a $72,000 decrease to state general funds for our attached agency impact for a total net increase of $53.7 million. That will conclude our budget recommendations, and I'll invite Andy back up and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions. Chairman Knight.
Thank you. And if you'll go back, I'm trying to go back and focus on a comment you made. It was in the 20 budget. Go back. I think it was right. No, go back. It was a HOPE grant. 1,508,000. You said something about this was the last 4 years. Can you repeat your comment there?
Yes, sir. The disbursements for HOPE GED grant have been in the $400,000 to $500,000 range for the past several years. In FY19, they totaled $421,000. The prior year, they were around $470,000, and then prior to that, they were in that same range.
So why is the cut just this year then? If this had been for prior years?
These funds were in the budget, and so what has happened this year as we've just trued these numbers up to match better our projections.
Yeah, but you said the last 4 years they equal that. Maybe I'm missing something.
It's been very similar disbursements the last 4 years, but the appropriation stayed the same, and so this year there was a decision made to true those numbers up. So we still have
the money go.
We still have it just goes back into the fund. We can't use it for anything else.
All right.
It's just lottery funds for.
Well, I guess a follow-up question then is back in 15, HB 801, we reset the HOPE scholarship from its previous award amount to a new value in the 21 budget. Can you tell us what is that value?
Sir, would you repeat the last part of that?
Well, in the HB 801 2015 session, we passed, the bill, and it reset the HOPE scholarship from its previous award amount to a new value in the 21 budget. And can you tell us what is that value?
I cannot give you just a single number, but what I can tell you is obviously there's activity around the various ways to implement that change. And so those have been ongoing conversations this last year, and they continue, and they are currently continuing. And so we're hopeful in the coming weeks that we'll know exactly how that is going to shake out, but I wish I had a better answer for you today, but I don't.
Okay. Well, as we get into the budget hearings, we'll get some more information. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you being here and good work you've done. One of my passions under Georgia Student Finance is the REACH program, and thank you for what you're doing with that and growing that program through the years. It's really vital. It's one of those game changers that I've seen in my rural community, giving those scholarships to those children. So I just really have a passion for continuing that program, and thank you for working with me and Director Nugel before with that, and Chris, thank you. But I looking in the 21 budget, and of course that program we've added new systems, growing that program, and just really don't see any money for what we're needing to continue that program in the manner that we've been doing. Could you address the $5,370,000?
Yes, sir. That amount is the amount that we need to continue our scale-up model as it exists today. So we have 2 more cohorts of new students that'll come on. As I mentioned, we have 154 districts already. We have 180 in the pipeline. And so those $5 million that is already appropriated is designed based on the current funding model to get us to scale up. At that point, it'll have to be readdressed.
Okay. I just want to make sure we as we plan, we have funds
Yes,
to continue that program in a strong, effective manner. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We share your passion with that program. Thank you.
Okay, that appears to be all the questions. We appreciate y'all being with us and look forward to working with you going forward. And last but certainly not least for today is the president of the Georgia Lottery Corporation, Ms. Gretchen Corbin. Gretchen, we're glad to have you with us today. And we're ready to listen if you're ready to talk.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's an honor to present on behalf of the Georgia Lottery Corporation. Hi, Chairman Hill. How are you today? Thank you very much to each and every one of you for being here late in the afternoon to hear from the Georgia Lottery. It is always an honor to be with you, presenting on any and every subject. But on behalf of Governor Kemp and the Georgia Lottery team, I've got great news for you today. And that is that Powerball is rolling, that there is a drawing tonight, and the amount is $343 million. So, Mr. Chairman, we need to make sure.
Can the state of Georgia actually buy a ticket and play?
I would leave that to the discretion of the wonderful General Assembly, sir. But thank you, as always, for hosting us here today. My name is Gretchen Corbin. I'm President and CEO of the Georgia Lottery Corporation, and I am thrilled to be here to share continued success that the Georgia Lottery continues to see and operate with. And we want to say thank you, as always, for your support and for your continuous work with the Georgia Lottery. Very quickly, today I want to make sure that I touch on the purpose, the history, and performance of your Georgia Lottery. As a quick reminder of the history and purpose of the Georgia Lottery, the lottery follows the vision and direction of Governor Miller and now Governor Kemp's vision to provide students with a high-quality start to their education through pre-K and to encourage the best and brightest students to stay in Georgia on hope, where they will remain here in Georgia, work here, create jobs here, and be economic drivers for the next Georgia generation in each and every one of your communities. The Georgia Lottery was formed by a constitutional amendment in 1992 for the purpose of generating funds for education, and we operate under several areas of oversight. These include a board of directors appointed by Governor Kemp, as well as a legislative oversight committee in the House and the Senate. In the House, this is the Regulated Industries Committee, and the Senate, the Economic Development Committee. We also have direction to provide a series of quarterly and annual reports to many, including the chairman of our oversight committees in the House and Senate, Governor Kemp, Speaker Ralston, Lieutenant Governor Duncan, as well as other leadership. And we exist for only one purpose, and that is to send revenues to the state of Georgia. And as demonstrated earlier, Mr. Chairman, in Georgia Student Finance Commission's fund source, the lottery, our job is to send money to this body, and we take that very seriously. From our first month, when our first members of the Georgia Lottery Board started the corporation with a loan and paid it off in its first week, 100% of our proceeds have been transferred quarterly to the Lottery for Education account and will, of course, continue to be. Governor Kemp and you, as members of this committee, appropriate lottery funds annually, while our colleagues at the Georgia Student Finance Commission and the Department of Early Care and Learning allocate the dollars that are appropriated. Our Georgia Lottery record remains strong. We have raised over more than $21.6 billion for education since our inception in 1993. There have been more than 1.8 million Hope Scholarship and grant recipients, and there have been more than 1.6 million four-year-olds who have attended lottery-funded pre-K. Most importantly, our returns to education. This is a trend line of our transfers annually since 1994. We started with $362 million in our first year in returns to our current amount of over $1.2 billion in fiscal year 19. In fiscal year 19, our annual transfer to the Georgia Lottery for Education account equaled almost $1.21 billion, which was an increase of $63.9 million from the previous year. That was a 5.6% increase. We had a banner record year last year due to a lot of our products, also including the $1.6 billion jackpot that we also saw in October of 2018. Fiscal year 19 was our 8th consecutive record-setting year and our 4th consecutive year to provide over $1 billion to the state. And between the years of 2011 and 2019, our returns have increased by 42%, and we, of course, continue to grow. On average, your Georgia Lottery generates $3 million a day for Hope and Pre-K. In the lottery industry, a standard measurement for success is the returns that a lottery returns, obviously, to the state per capita. And this number factors in population. In fiscal year 14, we saw returns being $95.39 per every Georgia. In fiscal year 19, we have grown per capita to $113.72 per Georgia resident. So you can see that our trend line of returns per beneficiary is up 19.2% from fiscal year 14. And with a growing state of Georgia, I like to remind ourselves that this does factor in population. So again, our Georgia Lottery is incredibly strong, very strong, and especially when you look at the lottery compared to other lotteries across the nation. These are our recent returns. This demonstrates our growth within all areas of our business and our bottom line to the state of Georgia. It's a breakdown of the two forms of lottery returns over the last 6 years, which includes our traditional lottery product and our COAM, which is our coin-operated amusement machines. In 2013, COAM was transferred from the Department of Revenue to the Georgia Lottery. COAM machines are coin-operated amusement machines from Class A machines. Chairman Tillery, we saw the jukebox at the Waffle House in Cedartown. That is a Class A machine, to our Class B machines that we see in our local convenience stores. Our responsibilities for these machines include licensing, permitting, collections, and compliance. The lottery receives a percentage of revenue annually from those machines, and the percentage began in 5% at 2014 and has grown 1% annually by statute, and it will cap out at 10% in fiscal year 20. The Georgia Lottery has more than 100 traditional lottery games at retail and online. So as I mentioned earlier, Powerball, Mega Million. Just yesterday, we had 5 new instant, which we call scratcher products, hit the shelves in our Georgia stores yesterday. That is our traditional lottery. So Mega Millions, Powerball, Cash 3, Cash 4, instant games, and our digital games are our e-instant. So if you go online to georgialottery.com or if you download our Georgia Lottery app, you have the ability to play there in our Players Club. And that traditional piece returns 95% to education, and then COAM has grown to contributing 5% of those returns. I like to look at the breakdown of the lottery dollar because our goal each day is to be as efficient as possible while generating the largest dollar for Governor Kemp and each one of you. Approximately 96 cents of every Georgia lottery is invested back to the citizens of Georgia in the form of education, retailer commissions, and prizes. The largest share of that dollar is always to prizes, as that is our product that we paid our players, 63.3% in fiscal year 19, followed by our returns to the state treasury, which is 26.6% for fiscal year 19. And then follow retailer commissions, payment to our vendors to operate our games, and the last 2% of the Georgia Lottery dollar makes up our entire operational, marketing, advertising, and promotional budget for the Georgia Lottery. So, as someone just like you, who is very invested in the economic, community development, and well-being of each one of our 159 counties, I grew up really excited when I look at this peach, because it tells me that 96 cents of that Georgia lottery dollar is going back to our communities. Again, whether in retailer commissions, whether to students, whether to colleges, whether to universities, or whether to, or to winners. Here's our growth projection, the most important numbers that we will share today. In fiscal year 19, our actual returns were $1.2 billion, and in fiscal year 20, $1.212 billion. We are very proud of this, but this is not an easy number to accomplish. You can imagine that with a $1.6 billion jackpot throughout the nation last year, that a lot of our states are saying, we might not make last year's numbers. And many of them are not going to their states saying that we will make that number or we will be above. But we're the Georgia Lottery, and we take our mission very seriously, and we love a good challenge. And so we have obviously budgeted to the point where we feel comfortable that we will hit these returns, but we are working hard to do so every day. But I wanted to take you kind of through a quick exercise to explain how we get to that number. And I want to back up. When I say it's not an easy number to accomplish, with the Mega Millions jackpot is the $1.6 billion, and we had a large Powerball jackpot as well. Those two jackpots meant $48 million in returns and over $100 million in sales. So jackpots, I will say there's something that I kind of I hope for, sometimes even pray for at night. Because with large jackpots, that provides obviously a healthier lottery. But what I also do on a daily basis is I look at everything that we can control, which is obviously every product outside of a jackpot that we don't have the ability to make sure that it rolls. And so we work hard on our scratchers to make sure that they are the best product, that we're sending them out at the best time for the market, and that we are providing the best product possible with our vendors. We arrive at the number, our annual budget projection, by analyzing historical growth sales rates. So you can imagine, we didn't just look at last year's number when we were looking for next year's. We look at our CAGR for the last 5 years. We look at those averages. We look at the games, what we can do, what percentage increase we feel that we can definitely ensure, and then we budget a specific number and we budget the specific number and then work towards that number through our sales. So we develop revenue goals by each game and price point. And our revenue projection is then, of course, presented to our Georgia Lottery Board for authorization, as well as submitted to the Office of Planning and Budget. Once that number is set, Governor Kemp and this committee have the ability to allocate those lottery proceeds through appropriations to the Georgia Student Finance and the Department of Early Care and Learning, as we mentioned earlier. And looking at year-to-date highlights, I'm happy to report that we are on our way to making this year's goal. Through the second quarter of fiscal year 20, the Georgia Lottery has transferred $586.4 million. So through the second quarter of fiscal year 20, we have transferred $586.4 million. Our first quarter of fiscal year 20 saw the largest Q1 in Georgia Lottery history at $291.6 million. We have seen increases from our internet channel. Our Digi Games, which are our electronic scratchers, have grown by almost $3.7 million, which is 19.4% last quarter. And our instant games grew by over $68 million, which was a 4.4% year-over-year increase. And as an example, Cash for Life, our draw games that have recently expanded to a daily draw, has increased sales by 231%. And that was kind of a programmatic piece that we sat back and looked at as a team, and not just a team, but nationwide, and thought, we need to make some improvements to this game. How do we do so? We decided to take that game to a daily game, and again, increased our sales by 231%. Another highlight are the 38 new millionaires we have had this year through the Georgia Lottery Corporation. I'm asked often by legislators, when we put in the anonymity through legislation, have we seen players who have wanted to stay anonymous? And the answer is yes. Do y'all know who these 38 new millionaires are? I don't know. I can find them, but we've kept them anonymous, thankful to your leadership. We consider ourselves and we hold ourselves to the standard of being one of the more forward-thinking lotteries in the country, and we are always looking for ways to grow while operating in the most efficient manner possible. Understanding that although we do not receive state appropriations, we exist solely for the state of Georgia. We know that it is important for us to send each and every dollar that we can send to Governor Kemp and this committee. So we have, of course, followed Governor Kemp's lead and continue to look at ways, as we always do, to manage expenses and maximize revenue. We will continue to look for cost savings while maximizing every opportunity to generate revenues for Governor Kemp and you to allocate for education. And as mentioned, we do daily through innovation, through our sales locations and our technology. I've kind of spoken a little bit about our product and what we do in regards to research and development. We are researching our new instant games every month, and we make sure that our customers are aware of these. We have an exciting program, exciting promotions. Tonight we will be promoting a new game called Cash Pop. Yesterday, as I mentioned, we released 5 new scratchers, which combined totaled almost half of yesterday's total sales. In regards to sales locations, our best friend has been and always will be our 8,600 retailers, those small businesses who operate in all of our local Georgia communities. We also work with our corporate retailers and have 3 locations operated by the Georgia Lottery, such as you have seen in our airport, and those have the second highest sales of lottery locations in Georgia. We want to be where people are. So you'll see us at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, you'll see us in sports stadiums, and you will see us in every community and even Sloppy Floyd. We will work diligently on our daily component, including our online offering, as well as our newly updated Georgia Lottery mobile app. We will launch games such as our new Cash Pop game that can be purchased through the app, online, or at retail. And this is kind of something I'm going to step back and talk about. Cash Pop being offered at retail, online, and on the app is a first for the lottery industry. And Georgia was one of the first states to step up and say, we want to work with a game where we can place not just in our retail, but also online so that they can encourage sales in both areas. There are 5 drawings every day. It's a very simple game that you only have to choose one number for. We think that it will be a great addition to our portfolio. And the best news, Mr. Chairman, is that we're working hard towards another record-breaking year, and we are on target to achieve our year-over-year returns and the projections that we have sent your way. Again, I have to sell a ticket, so if I may just wrap up by saying it's going to be a good week. Mega Millions and Powerball both over the three-digit number. Powerball tonight at $343 million, Mega Millions Friday night at $130 million. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and obviously we'd love to answer any questions you have.
Representative Stovall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, I'm right here.
Thank you.
Would you go back, I think it's maybe about 3 slides where you showed the different, the breakdown. That's all I wanted. Thank you. I didn't have a question. I just wanted to see that.
Was that a question? Does that complete your question? Is that all?
Yes, that
Oh,
was it.
okay. Senator Mullis, the outstanding former chairman of Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. President, or Mr. Chairman and Madam President. Thank you, and let me commend you for having a banner year. And not that I play lottery much, but if I do and when I do, I only do it solely to invest in our education.
Thank you. Thank you.
But my question is, why if I win anything, it's only another ticket? Do y'all like see me coming and, hey, giving this one another ticket?
I told him,
is there a technique to this?
If Chairman Mullis comes your way, he's told me he only wants to invest in the students. No, but we thank you for that ability we do thank you for the ability to allow free tickets in Georgia, because we know that it is one of our big generators of continuing to keep our customers and our players happy, as they have told us so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, President Corbin, for doing an excellent job and continuing to grow our lottery.
Yes, ma'am.
Every year I look at this growth and I'm very excited about the opportunity for more funds for education. But when I look at the numbers, I notice that the Hope and the post-secondary amounts are about 4 times the amount that goes to pre-K. Research shows pretty clearly that early learning and early education is the best way we can spend our buck on helping our educated workforce. So what would you suggest for me as a way to change that allocation sum and increase the amount of money that goes for early learning?
Representative Gardner, great to see you as always, and thank you for the question. Unfortunately, as you can guess, as much as I love education, I really just keep my head down and look to generate the revenues for education. So I would, of course, defer that question to this body and to OPB as the allocating members.
Representative Chokas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Corbin, congratulations on another record-breaking year.
Thank you, Representative.
I just wanted to share some numbers. We heard earlier from the Chancellor that we've got a little over 300,000. I think it was 330 some odd thousand students. And I've tracked that the Hope Scholarship services about 29% of the students, and that's been a constant factor over the years. And I just wanted to share that means the lottery is servicing over 100,000 students in our university system, and that's separate from our technical college grants and so forth. So thank you for the good work you do, and thank you for helping us educate Georgia children.
Our honor to partner with you. Thank you.
Senator Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Corbin, thank you for your presentation and for being here. I'd like to, if you have it, I'd like to get a copy of that chart and I'd more specifically would like to get a copy of that chart for the Class B COAM machines. We continue to have problems in my part of the state with COAM and the cash payouts and the crime that surrounds COAM machines, and I'm interested in how they support the Hope scholarships and the percentage that is going to Hope from those.
Be happy to provide you with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Walker just took my question. I keep hearing that too in my district. My district attorney says we have 130 locations in Bibb County for COAM machines, and very concerned about that too. Do you know how many locations we have of those in the state? You said 8,600 retailers for lottery. Do you know how many COAM, or could you get us that?
I can get that to you, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I want to say a little over 4,000. That's what I thought too. So a little over 4,000. I'll get you the exact numbers.
Yeah.
And can provide.
How confident are you that of how they're being operated, and whose responsibility is that? I guess to ensure that they are complying with
Thank
the
you
law.
for the question. So local law enforcement. And our responsibility is to license and to regulate, to be business friendly, and I will say that many of these operators are wonderful operators. When we do have bad operators, then we have partnerships with law enforcement, not just the local but also GBI. We also provide a little bit of a budgetary number to the GBI also for their work with COAM, but we really like to keep the business of the lottery and being business friendly and doing everything that we can with our good operators at the lottery, and then passing that on to local law enforcement and to the GBI. We have been, I would say, being that we received COAM machines in 2014, that in 5 years, we have spent a lot of time with this conversation, right? And so I think that we have seen a lot of good improvements where you know, we really had to bring them out in the open, and then we had to continue making sure that we're monitoring as we do daily. But we're at a point now where we are working with local law enforcement, and we do that by the Sheriff's Association and also the GBI. But to your bottom line question, local law enforcement.
Yeah, well, thank you. Follow up. Well, we heard from the GBI today, and they've got real resource issues. You don't know how many agents they have statewide looking into those machines, do you?
I can get that number back to you if that's okay.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Commissioner, that winds it up. We appreciate your presentation and what you're doing for the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ladies and gentlemen, we start in the morning at 8:30. For those of you that saw something you wanted to go back and retrieve, I understand that these presentations are on the website for each budget office, so I'd suggest you can go back and get them that way. See you in the morning. Have a good night.